Well, hello guys, and welcome to the first podcast of 2022. It's good to be back,
Hmm?
and we're both still here. So we have survived the
Just.
apocalypse. Yes. John. Well, it's been a bit of a build-up, that's for sure. I
Certainly
think the
has.
testing left a lot to be desired, but I think the first race has kind of satiated what we were all hoping for. I'm absolutely buzzing from that race, I've got to say. And not just the race, but like the qualifying, everything. The cars are just absolutely spectacular. And it was quite nice to have a race director with a bit of direction about him.
Oh, we're going there early,
We
are
are
we?
going
Okay.
there early. I'm going straight in. I don't care.
Okay. Straight for the
Yeah,
jugular.
straight
Get in
for
there.
it. Straight for it. Yeah. Well, your thoughts? You've obviously seen the race as well.
I thought it was a great race.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great race. I think there was a lot. It could have gone so easily wrong because there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of build up about what these new cars were going to be like. But no, I thought it was really good. I like the fact that we're seeing the field being mixed up a little bit.
Yes.
You know, I think it's fair to say whether you're a Mercedes fan or not, Mercedes have dominated the turbo hybrid era by some stretch. And whilst that's great if you're a Mercedes fan or a fan of the drivers in one of their cars, it does make everything a bit of a foregone conclusion. That's why last year was so great, because the Red Bulls were taking it to Mercedes for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
So a rule change always brings about those changes. And historically, you see the teams that are lower down the order are the ones that then work their way forwards in the rule changes because they've realised they're knackered in the current car, abandon it, start working on next year's car. You appear to be wearing a shirt of one of the teams that may be in one of those positions.
Yes, very much so.
Unfortunately, the team on your hat, perhaps not. But
No.
we'll get to that in a bit more detail later. But no, I thought it was a good qualifying. It was a great race. Very typical F1, exciting start, sort of stale in the middle, really picked up at the end.
Yeah.
Safety car mixed everything up.
Yeah, and the safety car always does. You know, it's kind of like hitting the reset button, so to speak. But I think the race as a whole worked much better. There wasn't any sort of inconsistencies in the stewards' calls or all that kind of stuff. It was very clear from the outset that the white line is the edge of the track, and that's it.
Mm.
There is no room for that, and that's a change that should have happened a long time ago, and it should have just been, that should have just been the basic rules. In any other sort of motorsport or other sport, you've got your boundaries. It's like football. You don't get to on certain matches go outside of the markings, to dribble around a player. That's not how it works.
Well, that's true. Although, in fairness, football's as good an example as any where rules are applied slightly differently depending on who the referee is and what their feeling is on the day. So, it can swing both ways.
But you can't get away from going out of bounds in a game of football. If the ball crosses the line, it's a throw-in, or it's a goal.
As long as it's seen, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And well, we're in the world of VAR now, and VAR sees everything. But we haven't actually on the subject of VAR, we didn't get to see the F1's VAR in action this race.
No.
So
well,
maybe
we did, and I suppose we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see it in action, but we know it was there in the background. It's sort of, it's very George Orwell, isn't it? Big Brother was watching.
Yes.
And we also know that there was at least one penalty given. Esteban Ocon knocked Michael Schumacher around for a 360 and was given. Sorry, do you know Martin Brundle did that in the live commentary as well? Little Freudian slip. Yeah, I picked up on it. Yeah, Mick Schumacher. In fairness, Mick made an incredible recovery. It was going through the S's. Ocon didn't back out of something he should have done. Tapped him on the rear. Mick did a full 360 and carried on his way, but of course lost a lot of time for it. Yeah, no, Ocon was given a 5-second penalty, which presumably was added to his stop.
Yeah, it was. It didn't obviously hamper him too much because he was up the road and bringing home some points. Not to jump ahead, but yeah.
No, but
poor Mick.
You talk about jumping ahead. I've got notes that because I'm that kind of a geek. I was making notes on my iPad throughout the race.
Excellent.
One of the things I do want to say, which is in my notes, is I hate the paint job on the Alpine. And it's not
Yes.
because it's not blue, and it's not because it's pink. It's because it's exactly the same paint job that was on the, I always want to call it Force India Racing Point. It's exactly the same that was on the Racing Point when it was the pink Mercedes a couple of years ago. And that, my brain can't compute that. I think I'm 2 years behind somewhere. It shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, no, I know, I agree. You know, I know a certain person that I was doing the live stuff with on my Twitch channel was, you know, raving about the pink livery being back, but I just don't really, if I'm being honest, I just don't, I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
mind the livery. I've not got anything against the livery
it's,
per se. My
it's,
my problem is that it looks
it
like
looks
a
like a
car
racing
that I
point.
know.
Yeah, it looks like a racing point, and livery should be distinctive to each team, as far as I'm concerned. You know, you don't, you know, you like your Ferrari, you know, you're getting a Ferrari red of some description. You know,
Yeah.
an Aston Martin is going to be British Racing green. A Haas is either going to be Russian or white. You know, it's that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, or bland grey. You know, like this.
Yeah, you see, you say that. I didn't mind the
I
grey.
liked
I
it.
liked the grey.
Yeah, do you know we need a good grey car? You know, the symbol, because you know
Yeah.
grey is the color of despair, hence the carpet, the chair, and the shirt. So
Hang on, my car's grey. Are you trying to say my car looks like the colour of despair?
I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, yeah, you are. You are.
You know, it's yeah, it's but no, you know, you've got the cars that stand out, and I always felt that Alpine's blue livery was, you know, that's their image, blue, Alpine blue. That's what it should be.
I like the black and yellow. I thought the black and
Black
yellow
and
of the
yellow
Renault
Renault,
the year
yeah,
before was actually a really
yeah,
strong livery. The blue for Alpine makes sense. It's very much their colour, but
yeah.
yeah.
It's one of those, isn't it? The thing is, though, I think they're just going to go where the money is.
Oh, of course they are.
BWT are going to throw ridiculous sums of money at you because, well, we want your car to be pink, and we want. See, now this is another one that bugs me. We want your drivers' helmets to be pink and the colour of our sponsors. Drivers' helmets should be their
Yeah,
own design.
yeah, I
Unpopular
agree.
opinion.
I agree entirely.
Yeah.
But this is where the question of ethics starts to come in.
Yeah.
You know, we noticed that there's a lot of cryptocurrency sponsorship on the cars this
Yeah.
year, and I'm sure someone will have looked and said, "Well, hang on, this really reputable company's offering me 10 million to go on the car." And then if cryptocurrency were on offering 10.5 million, they'd probably say, "Oh, do you know what? Let's just go with the reputable company." But if cryptocurrency are offering 25 million, hey, I'm
Yeah.
as moral and as ethical as they come, but I'd be taking the 25
Of
million
course you
because
would.
I've got a business to run and people to
Yeah.
pay.
Yeah. You got a car to develop, and you know,
Yeah.
in racing, that extra million is what, new front wing or new rear wing, yeah,
Well,
or whatever it
depends. If you've got
is.
Nikita Mazepin in your car, it might last you half a race.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
No, we do not.
That has been solved. So
Bye,
that's
Nikita.
bye, Nikita. See you later. Enjoy your flight home. Um, I mean, anyone would think that we don't like Nikita Mazepin, and they'd be right.
Yes, they would.
They would be very
100%.
right. Yeah.
I make
Uh,
no qualms about it.
Absolutely.
Didn't deserve to be there.
Oh, well, I mean, I've been busy doing live streams over the
Mm.
entirety, pretty much, of practice, qualifying, the races, including the feeder series.
Yeah,
Um,
you maniac.
yeah, and you know what? It's been quite interesting seeing the transition from the Friday morning practice sessions, or well, afternoon in Bahrain, the Friday afternoon practice session times, to then seeing what we got in Q3.
Yeah.
It was nice to finally see these cars driven in anger,
Mm.
but they do still look very clumsy in the slower corners. There's
Yeah.
really sort of
Yeah.
understeery. They look as they, you know, in the slower corners, they look as heavy as they actually are, because obviously the cars are heavier this year. And obviously
Yeah,
the
they
new
are.
wheels as well, the bigger wheels. Yeah, you know, to be honest, I kind of thought I was going to hate them, but I kind of like them to a degree. I don't
Yeah,
like the
well,
hubcaps. That's the only thing.
see, I don't mind the hubcaps.
See,
I'm okay with the hubcaps. I'd rather they were, white 5-spoke 17-inch alloys, but
yes. Yeah.
that's not good for aerodynamics, and we all know that. Otherwise, all the Prius would have fancy alloys. They don't. They have something very carefully sculpted for airflow. It's the same here for F1. I mean, we both like the F2 cars.
Yeah, the F2
They're not
cars.
supposed to be aesthetically pleasing.
Well,
They're
yeah.
carefully sculpted for
Yes, yeah, okay.
an airflow reason.
I'll give you that. Yeah, the
But
Formula
no,
2
we
cars.
like the
The
F2
Formula 2
cars, and
yeah.
that's what these have effectively become is a grown-up F2 car.
Yeah. Which really it should be, because the F1 cars were always a grown-up version of the Formula 3000 cars that we used to have of old. That was the natural step up. Because I mean, bloody hell, go back to the 90s, you'd have some teams make the jump from Formula 3000 and still use the base chassis from the F3000 car as their go-to base design. It didn't work, but
no, God, no. It got you on the grid.
It got you on the grid. Got you there. It got you on the TV cameras and the shiny things, and laughed at when you're 6 laps down and called 40.
But you know what? But it depends what your motivation is for being there. In Formula 3000, if you have 10 sponsors on your car, you might be getting £1 million a year. In F1, if you've got 10 sponsors on the car, they're probably paying you £1 million per sponsor.
Yeah.
So as long as you can be competitive with the budget you've got, the money you get from the extra media attention is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I agree. So what have you made then of where we were pre-season testing to now? Let's go towards qualifying, seeing the cars driven in anger.
So pre-season testing actually means very little for me when trying to measure the cars. The only thing I tend to take out of pre-season testing is reliability.
Yeah.
If a car has a fundamental issue with cooling or aerodynamics or something, it tends to manifest itself in pre-season testing. But we know none of those guys are running the engines at 10 out of 10.
No.
They're not pushing, they're sandbagging. Some of those, or the majority of those cars, will have gone out on a full tank of fuel and maybe some additional ballast just to really artificially slow them down. You don't see the true pace of the car till qualifying. And then equally, as we were saying through text yesterday, you don't truly see the pace of a car until race, because it's well within living memory of teams like Williams. They were terrible for this. They would build a qualifying car and they would turn the boost up on that thing, so it was putting out 1,800 horsepower before anyone thought that was a real thing, and it would do a lap.
Oh, it would do a lap. Yeah.
Because at the end of the lap, the entire engine block would have seized solid from the heat. Everything would have just melted into one solid block. So actually, race pace is where it counts. And there were some very interesting things that I saw coming out of the race. I mean, let's start off with the fact that the Ferrari engine, in particular, looks like a real powertrain again
in all
after
of its cars.
last year.
All of its cars, yeah.
Absolutely. The Haas was right up there. The Alfa was right up there. Any Ferrari engine was doing well. Equally, Mercedes. And again, I'm not talking about Mercedes, the manufacturer. I'm talking about Mercedes, the engine.
Yes.
The last 6 cars for the majority of the race were all Mercedes powered. When was the last time you could say that?
This is interesting because we had this discussion on the live stream, and I was saying that. I was saying to Lemming and the guys watching. I was saying, I can't actually remember a time when all last 6 cars going around the racetrack were all Mercedes-Benz powered. Because let's rewind, even just a couple of years ago, it would have been the first 6 cars going around the track that were Mercedes-Benz powered. And
you would have had the Merc, you would have had the pink Merc, and then you probably would have had McLaren's bringing up the rear. So absolutely. But there's the other big engine on the grid, of course, is the Honda.
Oh, well.
Of the 4 Honda-powered cars, 3 failed to finish the race. Now that says something to me. So the issue with Gasly, I heard people talk about electrical, but there was a fire.
There's a fire.
I worry cooling was the issue there.
Yeah.
I've also heard lots of rumours that it was a fuel pump issue for both Max and Sergio.
Well,
Now, I'd be really surprised because the fuel pump is a spec part given to the teams by Magneti Morelli.
yes.
And equally, the failures were very different in the respect that Max was able to freewheel into the garage, whereas Checo, his rear drive shaft locked and it was like yanking up the handbrake. To
Yeah.
me, those are very different failures.
So, I can confirm to you the failures on the Red Bull cars because
Oh, news.
Christian Horner put up an Instagram post not too long ago and
Okay.
confirmed it was the fuel system that failed on both cars.
Okay, sidebar. We need to talk about the fact that you follow Christian Horner on Instagram at a later date. Um, so, a fuel system failure on both cars. Do we know what Gasly's issue was?
So, now they're being a bit coy with Gasly's. Now, Martin Brundle seemed to suspect turbo,
Okay.
that something went on that. I will just double check because Gasly usually does make a post. So,
He did. Well, so I've seen Gasly has tweeted, but he was basically talking about this is not the barbecue I wanted to go to this weekend.
yeah,
Don't worry, we'll come back stronger, type of thing.
he hasn't mentioned what it is yet. I'm sure the team will
No.
get to the bottom of it and probably say
There we go.
something.
Pierre Gasly.
Yeah.
I don't like this Sunday barbecue. Tough one today, but a lot of positives from the race. Let's keep it up. Thanks for all the messages. I'm all good. Congrats to Charlito for the W.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. I don't know. I find it fascinating that,
It was
you know,
Honda
they
engines, yeah.
it was all Honda engines. And, you know, curse of the commentator, Crofty was saying,
Oh,
whatever it was, 12, 15 laps from the end, how we've never had a season opener where every car finished the race. And hey presto, Gasly went and stuck it out of the race.
yeah. I'm just having a look here. So Gasly actually did a statement for the Honda website.
Okay.
Okay, he says at the moment the team do not know what has caused the failure. The engine has been sent to Honda to be reviewed. So
Okay.
we might get some answers. We might not. I mean, because I instantly suspected. I said, well, if Gasly's has gone up like that, what's going to happen to Sonoda's?
Yeah.
You know, it's the same car because I don't know if you saw the TV images of the side of Gasly's car when they zoomed in. It was literally melting the car from the inside out.
Yes. It was
Around
pulling around the paintwork, wasn't it?
Yeah, around that sort of towards the rear of the side pod where it sort of goes into that rear part of the engine. So, I mean,
But you see, now again, I'm not
yeah,
an expert when it comes to the engineering behind these cars, but everything in the side pods, to my mind, is cooling
yeah,
and fuel tank.
yes,
Because that's where your airflow is coming into the car.
yeah.
The turbo would be higher up, presumably.
The turbo's on the top of the engine, apparently, from
Yeah.
how they've said. The fuel tank is usually situated between the driver and the engine, so it's kind of like this smushy bag
Okay.
thing. But then you've obviously
Yeah,
got
it's interesting. I would have thought you would have wanted that low down for centre of gravity.
it
but...
is. It's fixed to the floor of the car, but it's situated right behind the driver, so the liquid is kind of centre mass of the car.
Okay.
You know, I don't know how they work these things, but you know, obviously there's going to be fuel lines and stuff going around in there somewhere. So,
Well, it would make sense that the turbo's near the top of the car because the
Yeah.
air intake for the air
That's
filter
it,
is up there,
yeah.
and that's obviously where the turbocharged air is going back in. So
Yeah.
that would make sense. So I'm sticking with cooling
Mm,
being the issue for that
I
car.
think it's going to be linked. And if it is cooling, there's plenty of other cars on that grid that are struggling with cooling as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, so again,
Well,
here's something on my notes.
yeah.
Hulkenberg being told he's not allowed to pit because the car is too hot for the team to handle at a pit stop. When have you ever heard that?
That's shocking, isn't it? Frankly, that is shocking because I'm not being funny. Although we were in Bahrain, the air temperatures and everything were not hot. You know,
No.
it wasn't like it. You know, when we've been there before and it's been blistering heat waves and all that kind of stuff. You know, people were walking around with jackets on and stuff like that. It was legitimately cool. It was not a hot event. And my worry is
This...
that if we're having that here in a cooler event, what's going to happen further down the line? Because when we've been to even places like Kota and stuff like that, when it's been
Yeah.
hot, and I'm trying to think of other hot places that we go to. I know
Think
Malaysia
about
used to
Mexico, where
be.
the air is
Well,
thin because of the altitude.
well, this is it, and
Malaysia, Mexico.
cooling's always been an issue at Mexico,
Yeah.
always. Um, I mean, there was plenty of stuff. I mean, we know about McLaren's troubles now, and we'll go into that a bit more because I don't have words for it. But
Yeah.
even there was a brief radio call to Lewis saying you're going to need to call the brakes behind when he was chasing whoever it was, Perez, wasn't it?
Well, so Max was getting the same call as well. So
Yeah.
when it comes to cooling, I have two theories here. I've got one for brakes and one for car cooling. So I'll go through both really quickly.
Yeah.
When it comes to car cooling, previously aerodynamics had been the be all and end all of Formula One. How that air flows over and around the car. Because of the need now for ground effect, the aero going over the car is now less of an issue.
Yep.
It's the air traveling underneath the car. So they will be looking at what they can do to push more air under the car within reason. You push too much air underneath a wing, it's going to take off. But you know what I mean? That's what they're working now, how to get that air in different directions. I suspect that is reducing the amount of airflow going into the standard cooling systems within the cars. The engines haven't really changed. It's still the 1.5 litre turbo hybrids. So they will expect a certain amount of cooling. And if the airflow is not providing that anymore, we're going to have problems. So that's my prediction when it comes to airflow and cooling issues. And I think that's going to get worse as the year goes on unless we can find a fix for it.
Well, I mean, you only have to look at the reduced side pod intakes. That's case in point.
Yeah. Absolutely. The brakes. So we were seeing today that in slower corners, the cars were slower than they were last year.
Yeah.
In faster corners, they were going faster than they were last year, which makes sense because that's how ground effect works. The more airflow under the same as aero, I suppose, but the more aero under the car, the better it works.
Yeah.
So if your aerodynamics are not slowing you down enough for these corners, and this is also something we've seen, and again, something I definitely want to talk about on my list, the brakes are now having to work harder.
Yes.
I doubt there has been much of a change to the brake technology. It will still be a metal disc or a carbon ceramic disc. It'll still be a friction pad that's hitting it, and I don't think they'll have been beefed up a great deal.
No, and there was an issue as well in one of the practice sessions, actually. Checo Perez, I think it was free practice 2. I want to say it's free practice 2. He went out in free practice 2, obviously having done the earlier session, goes out on track, straight away jumps on the radio about halfway around the lap, and he's saying, guys, I've got a really long brake pedal here. And the team were like, yeah, we've already put some like pre-used brakes back on your car and I was just like, okay, which says to me they were trying to keep fresher brakes to then strap onto the car for qualifying and the race, because if they used them in practice, they haven't got a fresh set of brakes to use, because we are at the stage of the season where teams largely come to the first race and they've only made one of everything. They haven't had time to manufacture the final product yet. And we've seen it like Ocon today. Interestingly, he ran an older spec side pod to what Alonso ran, because his one disintegrated in free practice 3. He just where the car porpoised, or however you want to say that fucking word, it bounced on the straight, but it actually hit the bump on the track at the same time. And it just literally shoved the floor, and the whole side pod just blew apart. Poor old Nico Hulkenberg, who was following, got showered in carbon fibre. But, and that just, again, shows that, at this stage, things are limited,
They are. And let's face it, cooling's obviously something you're going to want to address. All of this stuff is something we're going to need to address.
Massively.
But I think the porpoising is going to be of a huge concern.
Yeah.
So for those of our viewers who are interested in the science behind it, so obviously ground effect is about air going in underneath the car, creating negative pressure and sucking the car to the ground. So the more air coming under the car, the more negative pressure, the more you're sucking down. You get to a point where the car then bottoms out because it's hit too much, and then there's no negative pressure, so it bounces back up again, and then it just does this constantly, on and off and on and off, all the way down the straight. Now, this was something that wasn't an issue. Well, I suppose it was to a degree, but in the late or early 90 cars, when they were still using a degree of ground effect, that was when they were introducing automatically adjusting suspension.
Oh God,
so the
yeah.
computer could adjust
Yeah.
for this for you. And that's been banned for years now.
Yes.
There is a strong argument now to bring that back.
Yeah.
To me, the only other thing you can do is you want to put springs and dampers in that car that are as stiff as you possibly can.
And then that will, though, I mean, you know, because that has been floated. There was a lot of discussion about that with Ted Kravitz. But, you know, apparently this aerodynamicist was saying, though, but in doing that then creates other car balance problems where they then have a car that's too stiff to navigate certain aspects of the Formula One. Because don't forget, and this is still a worry for me, we've got to go to places like Monaco. You know.
Oh, but Monaco is going to be a pain in the ass for ground effect because
well,
the higher you raise the car, the less the ground effect has, and you're going to need high ride height at Monaco.
Yeah, of course you are, and the cars are already poor around slow corners.
Jump cut,
yeah.
Because some of you probably heard my darling infant screaming for a bottle in the middle of the night. So yes, I've had to go and deal with my parental duties, and I have now returned.
Very good, very good. I can't even remember where we were. We were talking about porpoising, weren't we? Because obviously some people still don't know what that is and all that kind of stuff. And you were doing some very good, like, you know, the hand things.
Very technical.
Yeah, very technical. Very technical.
But then we got on to Monaco. You were talking about Monaco and how we're going to deal with the street circuits, and that absolutely,
it's a genuine concern, if I'm being completely honest. And
well, it is because the cars are so reliant on it that actually, if they don't have enough aero going over, we see this in Formula One cars. If you are not driving fast enough, you don't get enough temperature in the tires, and you understeer badly. In Monaco, turn one, that's straight into the barrier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no heroics into San Devote, as Jeff on the F1 game keeps reminding me. But, well, it's not just that. So I've got other concerns with this. So obviously Monaco we know is going to be a pain because you've seen a turning circle of an F1 car when it's just being pushed without all the aero going on. You know, the marshals, how many attempts does it take to wiggle a car into a marshal's gap? It takes a lot. My worry is that there's not going to be enough aero to get these cars around, especially the Lowe's hairpin. The Lowe's hairpin is going to be god awful. You know, before we'd see, brave people stick it up the inside. But I think that's going to have to be, like they do at Macau. There's a hairpin at Macau where it's got that bit of wool. And that is just a constant yellow flag zone. You're not allowed to overtake down there. It is single file. That is it. There's because you just won't make the turn.
Yeah.
My secondary issue is obviously the ground clearance. We talked about the ride height and everything else. Now, there are certain tracks with certain complexes where the only way to get through them is to nail the curbing. Prime candidate, the castle section of Baku.
Okay, yeah.
Because
see where you're going with this.
It's slow, but if you recall on the entry, they used to clobber that inside curb to sort of almost apex it because it was so narrow on the outside. I mean, God, you've seen it in the F1 games. You get that wrong, you're straight into the wall and off goes the right-hand side of the car and it's job done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's other tracks that have got aspects like that. Imola's chicane, at the top of the hill, about just to coming into the last sector, the really tight one. How are they not going to navigate curbs like that with these floors? Because you damage that floor, you might as well just write off your race.
So interestingly, I wouldn't be worried about damaging the floor. I think the floor would remain intact. But if you imagine, the curbs are relatively steep.
At what?
If you are raising, if you are taking a turn and then the car is tilting because it's going under that curb, you are changing the amount of negative pressure underneath the car. In theory, you are still keeping a decent amount of grip on the loaded wheels.
Yeah.
If you're taking a left-hand turn and
Yeah.
hitting a left-hand curb, and you're reducing the amount of grip on the unloaded wheels. But I mean, this is a Formula One car. It could be very easy to swap ends because that will
Yeah.
create an imbalance. So yeah, I think you might be on something. We could see very different driving style this year. People paying much more respect to the curbs.
Yeah.
That particular one at Azerbaijan is going to have to be taken a hell of a lot slower. There's no two ways about it because they're just going to end up straight in the castle.
Yeah, it's either going to have to be taken more carefully, or they're going to have to amend the curb and make it a more just a painted sort of curb. But then what's the point? You might as well just get rid of it altogether and just open it up a bit. But then does that take away elements of racetracks if you start then going, oh shit, like we've got an inherent problem here. Let's get rid of all these like raised curbs that stop drivers maybe taking liberties at firing across them like a missile, you know.
I mean, it depends on the racetrack. I'd have absolutely no issue with that corner being smooth somewhat at Azerbaijan because it's not an overtaking spot.
I mean, I don't.
You
like
don't see
anyway,
people overtaking.
So
no,
it doesn't really bother me too much what goes on there.
Agreed. But it serves no value other than it's aesthetically pleasing and people like seeing it.
Yeah.
It could just as easily be a smooth corner and not change the racing.
Smooth corner, just paint something on the road so drivers have got like a visual reference point to go for.
Yeah.
On the subject of visual reference points, got another issue with these new cars.
Okay? Here we go.
So, I love it. I think it's great. But at Bahrain, I don't know, you must have seen it. They've had to obviously extend the painted lines by 4 meters so as the drivers can actually see where to park their car on the grid. Now,
I hadn't noticed that.
Did you not notice that? So if you look at the yellow lines, if you quickly Google on it, if you look at the yellow lines on the grid slot, when you were closest to the pit wall, the yellow line was literally off the side of the racetrack and sort of approaching the pit wall. My problem here, what are you going to do at Monaco? Where are you going to get your visual reference points? Because the drivers are saying the normal yellow lines they cannot see with the guards over the front wheels and how chunky the new wheels are. They cannot see the normal yellow lines. So I came up with a plan.
Okay, I bet it's not the same plan I'm picturing, but you go.
No, yeah, I've come up with a plan. And this is, I like to call this Steve's Monaco Equal Opportunities Plan.
Oh my God. Oh no, where are you going with this?
So, I have a great idea, and we can keep things yellow, for instance. Okay, let's just keep things yellow. The line's yellow. Okay. Let's keep the markers yellow. Okay, now I want you to get this in your head. So, along the pit wall, you have gaps in the fencing which line up with the grid slots. Yes. So, my grand idea: we employ. You're gonna love this. So there's what is there? There's 10 rows, isn't there? Yeah, 10 rows. So we employ 10 shepherds with sticks who hold out the stick from the pit wall, so the driver can line up their car with the yellow stick. And so you shepherd them into the grid slot. There you go. I've solved the problem. Genius.
And then for those that are really struggling at the back, we send out the dogs to go and away, come by.
Herd them in, like, where you going? Get in there. Hey. Yeah.
As ideas go, probably the worst I've ever heard. But
I mean, okay. I have a backup plan.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Silly of me.
I wasn't just gonna, not come up with something in case this one falls through. You need a fail-safe. So, F1 done this whole thing, didn't they, where they got rid of the grid girls, okay? And they replaced them with the grid children. So why not just standard child? Standard child at each grid spot, and there you go.
It ain't often I'm lost for words, Steve. But you've got me on that one, mate. I got nothing.
I'm cry laughing. I got tears. I mean, I haven't heard anyone else coming out with suggestions, so
You've heard no one coming out with those suggestions.
well, that's a minor detail. That's a minor detail.
You don't half pick up on some of the weird stuff in Formula One. So I hadn't noticed that, and I couldn't give a monkey's. It's the short
Well,
answer.
Hey, you will do when half the grid's got drive-through penalties for missing their grid spot. Yeah.
Come up with an ingenious plan to fix it. Hell, bring back grid girls. What was wrong with grid girls?
I
They
don't
still
wanna,
use them in touring cars and IndyCar.
right? I don't want to get into it too much because I know there are diehard people out there that are like, no, get rid of the grid girls because it offends me. Fuck off, basically. My opinion on this, and I actually know a few grid girls from my time in motorsport.
Yeah.
One of them, she's quite well known actually. Michelle Westby. Michelle Westby. She's done a lot of like TV
I know
stuff.
Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle Westby. She hit the nail when this all happened because obviously she's done loads of grid girl work. She's done lots of promo stuff, and has been the face of a lot of racing teams on their campaigns throughout the seasons. In touring cars and elsewhere. And what she found baffling, and the post always stuck with me because I think she just hit the nail on the head because it was just to the point and it was great. They got rid of grid girls because they accused it of being sexist and
yes, they did.
Not being for women and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and that was campaigned a lot by the feminists. Like, well, I say no. See, I'm all for feminism, but extreme feminists. Let's put them in their own category.
How can we walk this tight line?
No, the extreme feminists.
Yeah.
And what the grid girls and a lot of them all come out and start saying the same. And they started to say, well, since when did you speak for us? Because we choose to do this work. This is our way into the motorsport world. We are getting to be in an environment and in a career and in a job that we love because we love motorsport. And although we might not be, I don't know, qualified to be an aerodynamicist or something like that, they have their way of going in and being part of that world. And they enjoyed their work. And they found it very frustrating that there was this whole campaign of women need more jobs in motorsports and all that kind of stuff. And actually you got rid of 20 girls' job on each race weekend.
Yeah, it's the sweeping generalization, and the problem is people, let's say feminists, because you've already brought it up, will look at this as this is objectifying women and it's terrible and this, that, and the other. But that's their opinion. The people doing it might not feel that way. Michelle Westby, as you brought her up, is a great example because not only was she a grid girl and a model, but she was also a professional drifter.
She still is.
And she still is. And I don't know if she still does this, but when I knew her, her actual career was she was a project manager. It wasn't like she was serving on the tills in a two-bit shop around the corner. She was a clever girl, and she had. I'm using her in the past tense, like she's dead. She is a clever girl. She had a good career. I don't know if she still has that particular career because everything else has taken off for her in the meantime.
Well,
but as you say,
she's doing presenting work.
There you go.
Yeah,
this gave her the in and the opportunity in the world that she wanted to be in, and she chose voluntarily to be there and fought tooth and nail to be there. It wasn't just she was picked off the street because she was a pretty thing with nothing in her head. You'll do.
Yeah.
But equally, I have no problems. I'm absolutely for equal this. There's 20 spaces on the grid, 10 girls, 10 boys.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there's a pretty
that want to do this.
Of course there is, and it's a modelling opportunity. And let's face it, for every man and woman out there that dreams of being a chief executive or an actor or a musician or whatever it is, there's also a whole load of men and women out there that dream of being a model and strutting down a catwalk. Would someone go and tell Naomi Campbell that she's wasted her life? She's a household name.
Exactly, you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that one too deeply, but I see no problem with it.
No, I see no problem with it, and will probably, to some degree be, oh, well, you're just men and you're just saying that because you visually like the females. It's like, well, no,
Well, that's what propagates our
because
species. So,
well,
there is that.
well, there is that, and my point is though, who actually, out of all the ones campaigning for this anti-grid girl agenda, who actually took the time out of that fucking group to go and speak to the grid girls themselves and actually ask them, oh, why are you doing this? Not just assume, oh, they're being objectified. You know, maybe they're not. Maybe they're there because they legitimately like it as their career choice.
Yeah. But there are still lots of race series that still use
There
them and
are,
still use
there
them
are, yeah,
effectively.
and good,
I'm sure
good.
I'm sure the bikes do. I'm sure the bikes still have
Yeah,
grid girls.
MotoGP. I think it was only FIA endorsed series, wasn't it? It was the FIA that got rid of them. So you don't get them in Formula 2 or Formula 3 because they're FIA. But if you,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I watched F1 when there was grid
oh
girls. I
yeah,
watch F1 now when there isn't. It's not the reason I watch or stopped watching.
no,
I just think it's an interesting feminist argument. But we probably
yeah.
shouldn't dive too far
No, we're not
down
going
that
to
rabbit
dive too
hole.
much into it. It's just a shame. It's just a
Yeah,
shame that it cost a lot of people their job. Basically, that's
I agree.
what I find more insulting about it.
I agree.
But it is what it is. So we've talked about possibly herding F1 cars and using children to mark the grid. Who
Yeah,
knows?
German shepherds at the back of the field. That's what we're saying. Children at the front of the shield at the field,
Yeah.
and German shepherds at the back was my takeaway from that
Well,
conversation.
I mean, let's. I don't want to divulge too much.
Or border collies, I suppose. But
Well,
yeah,
working dogs of some kind, anyway.
yeah,
But I don't want to divulge too much. But what you could also do is still have the herding dog for if the children are slow getting off the grid, and you send the dog out there to whip them up. I don't know. There you go.
So tires, I think, was somewhere on this list.
Yeah, well, Anyway, back to actual stuff.
Meanwhile, back on the ranch.
Yes. Yeah, I'll get back.
Well,
on
so
the
there is,
horse.
in fairness, I do want to talk about tires because
Yes, actually,
there were some really interesting things that I spotted. One of them, the tie-in is linked to porpoising.
Yes.
So we saw lots of lockups, particularly at turn one, from a lot of drivers. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, K-Mag had a big one as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to make an assumption here is that actually with an undulating car creating different amount of ground effect as it goes along, that's changing the mechanical and aerodynamic grip of the car as it goes. Therefore, when you get to the braking point, it depends where you are in one of those cycles of undulation as to how much grip you have at the front wheels in order to apply the brakes.
Yeah.
So it sort of stands to reason that it's really challenging to work out where your braking point is because it's moving lap by lap.
Yeah. Certain drivers seem to cope with it well, better than others, but that was the cars that were handling that effect better than the others. The Red Bull was quite planted, and my belief of why the Red Bull is quite planted is, let's not forget that Adrian Newey actually worked on ground effect designs when he was very, very early as an apprentice, back when he first started getting involved in the design process. So he's already got kind of an advantage in a sense of he's got that experience already. So he understands, because at the time, obviously, he was designing for March and Leighton House of all teams. And they did not have,
way back when.
Yeah, they did not have active suspension for these ground effects things and stuff like that. So he was designing for cars with normal suspensions and stuff like that. So it's kind of a bit of an interesting tidbit, I think, because I think it was Martin Brundle actually on one of his little article things was actually talking about it, saying that he expected them to be, quite well prepared with that kind of advantage of he's done it before, so he can do it again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamentals of the technology won't have changed since, Colin Chapman's days in the 70s. We have better technology around to support it, but the fundamentals remain exactly the same. So yeah, Newey has a bit of a head start in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, while we're talking about tyres, just going back.
Yeah.
That's I found fascinating in the race. The tyre strategies were all over the place. Like, it was bizarre. Like,
it was an unknown.
Yeah, it was. And I kind of think it's going to be similar actually going into Jeddah. I don't think they're still quite there with the understanding of these tyres yet. It's.
So I think it's going to get worse. I heard some
Mm,
interesting things in the commentary which I wasn't aware of. One was that there is 34 degrees less temperature in the tyre blankets this year than there was
yes,
last year.
on the rears, yeah.
Yeah, on the rears. And that the long-term potential move is to remove tyre blankets
Yeah,
entirely and have tyres going out at ambient temperature.
like
Now,
F2. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Now we saw the first one for me was Lewis because of course
Yo.
he jumped from the softs to the hards, went straight on, couldn't brake, couldn't stop for turn one, couldn't then get the power down coming out of turns 2 and 3. It was fishtailing all over the
Yeah.
place. Later in the race, I saw numerous cars warming and weaving their tires
Lance
on
Stroll
the straight,
especially. Yeah,
not under the
yeah,
pit, not under a safety car, just in normal racing because they were struggling to get the temperature into them. And this sort of stands to reason because by moving from, I don't even know, were they 12-inch wheels or 13-inch wheels? But
13
what,
inch. Yeah, 13-inch
13 did you
wheels.
say?
Yeah, yeah.
So from moving from 13-inch to 18-inch wheels,
Mm,
you've reduced the profile of the tyre. So that there's significantly less carcass in those low profile tyres. Therefore, presumably, it will gain heat more quickly,
mm.
but it will also lose heat more quickly.
Yes.
So just trundling down the pit lane, they'll be like blocks of ice by the time you
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
the end. So that's going to be really interesting for how strategy plays out.
Oh, massively, massively. Yeah. What also intrigued me was the lifespan of the tyres. Now, I found this quite
Mm,
fascinating because some people on the softs they were going off after just 12 laps, and
hmm
that's a short lifespan, that's 12
yeah.
laps. But then other people like K-Mag were able to take a set of softs 23 laps in, so almost
hmm
doubling the life expectancy of that. But when they switched on to the mediums, a harder compound that in traditional history has been the more durable and longer life than a soft, they were coming off them in a shorter span, doing a shorter stint on
mm
those. It was very bizarre. I mean, some people would go in soft to hard to mediums and then back to softs again. What was meant to be a two-stop race ended up spiraling out of control because I think the first driver jumping on the radio saying to consider a free stop was Carlos Sainz in third place for Ferrari. He literally jumped on the radio to Ferrari and was like,
Yeah, he did.
we need to consider a free stop here. And it was all of a sudden it was like, whoa, what? Like,
Mm.
you seriously? Yeah,
Well,
interesting.
so here's an interesting thought. This is something I hadn't considered previously, but you just talking about the tire changes and people moving away from the mediums has got me thinking about it. For ground effects to function,
Mm.
you need to be low enough to the ground to create that negative pressure underneath the car.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing we know from Formula One cars is that as the race goes on, they get lighter
Mm-hmm.
because they are burning their fuel load. Now, without any artificial or computerized way to continuously lower the car as that fuel load changes,
Right.
presumably that car is raising
Yeah.
as the race goes on. So, yes, it's getting lighter, but it's also producing less aerodynamic grip because the grounder force is less effective. Therefore, presumably, that's why people have gone towards a softer compound of tyre to try and maintain the amount of grip that they had in the laps before. Yeah,
Mm.
there's no way in hell I'm the only person to have thought of that as an issue, and there's no way in hell Formula One engineers,
Yeah,
who are
exactly.
infinitely more clever than I, will have come up with some kind of a workaround or a solution for that, even if it's adding more rake to a front wing to send more air underneath the car or artificially lower it at some point.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting concern.
Well, it is. It is. I another concern was I I believe that Pirelli took the wrong compounds to Bahrain.
Mm,
They were there was because Pirelli, in fairness, might have been caught out by the cooler conditions in Bahrain, because usually
hmm
traditionally it is quite warm. It's like driving in the summer. It's
mm,
you usually got some really good temperatures. So they took the hardest compounds out of their set, and
mm.
when you saw people getting on the hard tire and that, getting the heat into that tire was a bloody nightmare, and it took a good few laps to get there. Um, I don't know. You know, It could be a mix of both. It could be that it's just that's the way the new tyres are, and that's what we're going to be in store for the rest of the season. Because Pirelli also made an interesting call with their design of tyres, and I found this fascinating.
Hmm.
So they've designed a tyre for Formula 3, okay?
Okay.
But there's a specific formula that they've used for the rear tyres of the Formula 3 car, and it is designed to gradually go off no matter what compound you're on, whether you're on the softest or the like whatever. It's designed to go off to make the rear end of the car slide
Hmm.
because for whatever reason, for whatever reason, and
Okay.
as
But
you
it's more
you know,
dramatic.
it is more dramatic, but is that not starting to border? And this might be a bit ethical. Is that not starting to play border on almost playing God by having the driver's lives in your hand? Because what if they get a snap of the rear and it's unexpected? Because there were a few that were caught out a little bit with it where they had to dive onto the runoff. But if you
Hmm.
go to a tighter track where the rears suddenly go off and you go down there, whereas the last lap you had all the grip in the world, you go barreling down into, I don't know, San Devote at Monaco and you go to stab the throttle and whoom, around it goes. It starts to create a bit of a this is a bit artificial and it's risking people for no good reason. I
But
don't
this
know.
is where I start to get a big problem
Mm,
with F1 and lots of modern motorsport in general. We've talked a bit in the past about my hatred of fan boost in
yes.
Formula E
Oh, don't even get me
because it
started.
is the
Ugh.
epitome of unfair
Yeah.
racing, you know. And I can't fathom it. So this is what kills me. If I have a 1.3 litre 1960s Mini Cooper and I go, Steve, challenge you to a race, first one to complete 5 laps of Silverstone, and he turns up in a 1991 Ferrari F40, I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me. There's no two ways about it. I'm going to have completed 2 laps and he'll have done all 5. Is that a fair victory? Of course it's not, because he had very different machinery. The whole point of Formula One is there are set rules and set guidelines that push you into doing certain things in certain ways. Some people find ways to bend and alter them a little
Yeah.
bit, and everyone else is catch up. DRS is a perfect example. McLaren came up with the F duct. Everyone tried to copy. DRS became a thing. The double diffuser that was started by Red Bull and the flexible wings that Red Bull had, all these things were a big deal. It was Bernie bloody Eccleston
Mm,
who was first with this, who loosely touted the idea of using sprinklers to artificially dampen a track because
yes.
wet races were more exciting.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are. But when did Formula One stop being the best cars in the world with the best drivers in the world fighting on a fair and level playing field?
Yeah.
When did we have to start introducing this artificial nature to the racing in order to do it?
Hmm.
And I'll tell you when, because I have this as my post rate thought, as something I wanted
Oh,
to go to.
okay.
The coverage has become very, what I would call, American.
Yes.
And the way I describe this, I love, Discovery Channel, History Channel,
Mm.
stuff like that. If you watch a British made program on Channel 4 or BBC One about World War Two, they'll tell you the facts and everything will flow on. When you watch it on Discovery Channel or History Channel, because there are breaks throughout the program, they want to make sure you're going to come back after the advert, so they leave it on a cliffhanger and they go, and this might have turned the tide of the war if it wasn't for the Germans doing something dramatic. Dum dum dum. I don't need to know there's a
No.
cliffhanger here. I know
Yeah.
Germany lost the war. I know
Exactly.
the Allies won.
Yeah.
That was years ago. I get that.
Yeah.
But this is what the Americans do. They really dramatize stuff.
Mm.
Netflix's Drive to Survive is the
Well.
next thing about it. That's
Yeah.
really it's creating new fans for the sport, and I love that.
Yes.
But I hope to God it's not alienating the loyal, strong fan base that has been here for donkey's years. And this is what I'm seeing.
Mm.
This is what I'm seeing with Formula One and this talk of, tyres going off, particularly at the rears, not at the fronts, because we
Yeah.
like seeing cars slide a bit. That's not what I want to
No.
see as a fan.
No. Uh, and I don't think it's fair on the younger drivers, to be honest. You're meant to be there in an equal field. They're all the same chassis. They're all the same engine. The same brakes. Da 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 da. And I get that. Oh, you could argue, well, they've all got the same tires. yes, but these guys are coming up and are maybe, Formula 3 is sometimes the first proper racing car you jump into out of go-karts. That is
Sometimes, yeah.
sometimes how it goes. Now, my concern is that person who's just jumped into his first race out of go-karts into a single-seater. Yes, he will have done a bit of pre-season testing, but as we know, it's never pushing the boundaries.
Mm.
Get to the first race. He is vastly more like inexperienced than anyone else. He comes down there, first 5 laps, he's got grip and all that kind of stuff. He's going to react differently to suddenly, whoa, okay, the back end's gone. Is he going to react in the same way and catch it before going into the wall or spinning into the rest of the field? Or, it's causing drama and edge of the seat tension for no good reason, frankly. I would rather be enthralled by the actual racing than the artificial tyres that, oh no, it's gone off. Has it though? Or have you just made it to do that?
I agree. And you know what? Let's focus on the positives here. So I've written the lap numbers down so I knew it was a thing.
Yeah.
Laps 17, 18, 19, Max Verstappen versus Charles Leclerc. Swapping positions.
Great.
Every lap. In T1. Getting it back down the next straight with DRS. That was amazing. And Max, I think, could have played it a bit more clever. I think I would have tried on the third attempt, staying behind in turn 1 and being as close as possible to get the slingshot. But he went for the lunge, locked up, and that was the end of his opportunity.
Yeah.
But that was great.
It was great. It was fantastic. I mean, Christ, on the live stream, we were going absolutely mental for it because we just couldn't believe that. Well, for one, it's Formula 1 and we're getting racing. Like, I mean, when have we had this? Like, it was just great.
Nigel Mansell was still around. That's when.
Oh, yeah, exactly. This is it. This is the thing. And it was fantastic. It was proper good, hard racing.
Yeah.
With cars that could follow and could overtake. And that I liked.
So that. I don't think we've necessarily seen the best of how that's improved.
No.
I'd love to see how cars follow through, Maggots and Beckett's at Silverstone and some of those really challenging places. But that first attack from Max Verstappen on Charles Leclerc, he was a long way back.
Oh, yeah.
And DRS throughout the race didn't actually look as strong as I think people had feared. It was clearly an advantage.
Yeah, it got you there, but
yeah,
the rest is up to you then to be ballsy on the brakes. And that's what we want. We want to see the drivers using that ability to gauge how deep they can go into the corners and...
And I don't want to see someone chasing someone for 15 laps, getting, a 10th here, a 10th there, a 10th there, to then get within 2 seconds of them and then not be able to get any closer because the dirty air is knackering them. That's
not racing, is it? That's just a slideshow, really. You just this is great.
One thing I also picked up though, and it was Max and Charles that sort of gave me this, is that the undercut is still clearly very much a thing.
Yes, yeah.
Now who knows what the overcut will be like, but certainly there was anything from 2 to 3 seconds in that one lap is what Max was pulling back on Charles Leclerc from the undercut. So that's still clearly going to be a very powerful tool.
Yeah, Christ, the gap was nearly 3.5, 4 seconds, and when they came out of that first round of pit stops, all of a sudden Leclerc has got his hands full with Max basically in that titanic battle. And even on the second one, Max got close. It was a big gap, and he still got close with the undercut. So
I'll tell you one thing I did note, though, just reading through my notes here, there was a few occasions that Max lost his cool in the car.
Yes.
Now, I've often thought, and maybe this is me being a grumpy old man, I've often thought the way Max speaks to his pit is just out and out rude. Kimi could be blunt as hell, but he was Kimi. Lewis can be quite rude to his pit as well at times. But on the whole, drivers are usually relatively respectful. Nikita Mazepin was another one who wasn't, but he was called out by Gunter Steiner for it. But Max was really losing his cool and losing his shit. So he yelled back to the pit, where are we? He was losing his cool around being told to have slower outlaps. So particularly when he moved to the mediums, he was burning those tyres really quickly to get to where he needed to be to overtake, but then it fell away. And then the next time round, he had the slower outlap, didn't get close enough, and then yelled at the team for them making a poor decision, and he's never going to do that again.
Yeah, and do you know, Ted Kravitz called him out on his bullshit with this.
Oh,
Because
really?
don't know if you heard the info. So obviously Ted listens to everything and then goes and does his Ted things where he digs and he finds this information that we all want. And this was great. So he said he was going to go and have a nosy because he wasn't sure that Max's comments were genuine about that he'd taken it easy on his outlaps and lost time to Leclerc and could have been in front on 2 occasions. So Ted went and did some digging and he found one of the data analysts at one of the teams who willingly pulled up the data. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And lo and behold, when he done the comparison, the only difference on the first pit stop, so the first pit stop, the outlaps, Max, interestingly, through the sectors that you can measure without the pit stop being a part of it, so sector 2, sector 3, Max was 2 tenths faster than Leclerc on their outlaps, right? So that immediately ruled out that was a load of bollocks, that you took it easy because you actually went faster than Leclerc on your outlap. You compared to his, you went faster, and then he jumped forwards to the second one, and he said, first off, there is around a 9 tenths to 1 second difference in Leclerc's favour on the second one. However, what he also did is he pulled up their pit stop times, and that time was how much quicker the Ferrari was in the pits. So at no point was Verstappen taking it any easier on his outlaps compared to Leclerc. So where he's got that in his head, that is just going to be his ego and bravado talking, I think, to cover his downfall, because there's no actual pace difference between them. It was just merely the fact that Ferrari's pit stop was better than Red Bull's on the last go.
I mean, race driver excuses
I love them.
are a thing, aren't they? And it's something that wrangles a little bit with me, because I think a measure of a man is when you can put your hands up and go, do you know what? That was me. I fucked up. Yeah. I'll put it right. I'll fix it. Yeah. Danny Ricciardo, the one that sticks in my mind, I can't remember what race it was, but there was a race last year where they're like, Danny, we need more. We need more from the car. He's like, yeah, no, I'm sorry, that was my fault. What do you need? Oh, we need another 7/10 a lap. Okay, I'm on it. And for the next 3 laps, he was, but he was like, yeah, do you know what? I hold my hands up, team. That was me. I'll fix it. You tell me what I need to do. Yeah. That's a man. That's a man right there. Yeah. Max is still a little bit petulant with some of this. He needs to take some more ownership.
He is, and he's going.
Actually, he was doing well.
Yeah, he was. He was doing well, and I don't think the way he was behaving, I just still don't think it's the behaviour of a mature man. Or
a world champion. I mean, let's face it, he is now the face for the next 12 months. He is the face of Formula One. He is the world champion, the one to beat.
Well, I noticed that he's been given gold boots as well to race in. Fuck off.
So, and don't get me wrong, I think it's been quite clear on the podcast from the last 12 months that we have not necessarily warmed to Max Verstappen over the last year. Previously, I loved the energy and the dynasty.
When he burst on the scene, he was pulling off that move around the outside of Blanchimont on NASA in the Toro Rosso. That was exciting. It was like, wow, where's this kid come from? This is brilliant.
But we've been turned off a little bit by some of his written, spitting his dummy and his toys out of the pram, which clearly is something he's learned from Christian Horner, who continues to bring the sport into disrepute with his comments.
Every time.
But the reason I bring that up is the other thing that I did notice is he is the first world champion to have the number 1 on his car since they moved to having your own numbers.
Yes.
Because Lewis had his own.
Yeah,
Nico Rosberg had his own. Well, Rosberg retired. Seb had his own number. Seb didn't go for the 1, did he?
Yeah, but it didn't change till the hybrid era, and Seb wasn't world champion in the hybrid.
Oh, so it's just Lewis then, just Lewis and Nico. Okay. So fair enough. Maybe I'm making too much out of that then. But I thought it was interesting.
I think in general the press are making too much out of it, to be honest, because he is legitimately the first world champion that has had the chance, apart from Lewis, to change his fucking number. It's, I personally, and this is, probably an unpopular belief because I know there's hardcore people that go, no, that's his number, that's his brand. I still maintain that the world champion should race with number 1 on the car. You know,
Okay.
that's I don't know. It always used to be, the teams used to have the numbers in the order, and if the world champion hadn't stayed on, they get the number 0. You know.
Yeah, and a la Damon Hill and David Coulthard in the
Yeah.
and 93,
93.
94 seasons.
Yeah, because Prost obviously retired and he was the world champion, and
Yeah, but that also got messy because don't forget Ferrari used to run with the 27 and the
27.
28, which was a
Yeah.
hang up of Gilles Villeneuve, and the
Yeah,
number issue went back all the way there.
Yeah, exactly. And that was there's been some weird car number regulations over the years.
I actually prefer drivers having their own numbers.
I like being able to choose my own number, but I would still say in my opinion anyway, the world champion I feel should number 1 just fits right, just seems right. It could be used as more of a marketing thing for the FIA to use, but
I think it's more bragging rights than anything else.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's number. I'm number 1. I'm number 1. I've got number 1 on my car. I've won the championship.
That paints a target on your back.
Which, well, unpopular, but Max chose number 1. Bragging rights, feed his ego a bit. I'm number 1. I've got number 1 on my car.
Things keep up the way they are. I think we might be seeing that in a Rosso Red chassis at the end of the year.
I mean, I made some bold predictions, which I'll go into towards the end of the stream, because the end of this podcast. But I made some bold predictions with my.
You weren't alone in that.
No.
What was my prediction? Latifi for world champion.
Yeah, and Williams for the constructors. I think the less said about that, the better.
Agreed. Let's move on. Swiftly move on.
Let's move on. So obviously, we had some great battles. Let's talk about. Well, you got something you want to say?
I do. I'm still going through my notes here. So you were talking earlier about Max's slow pit stop. Now, I'm going to put this out there, and I definitely need to watch this at Jeddah and see if it is an issue or not. I was noticing cars rocking on the jacks in the pit stop. Those cars were not as stable as they used to be. Now, they are wider. There's a wider track to the cars now. Those tyres are heavier. That was, a lot was made about how they are much heavier tyres. But I particularly was watching Lando's last stop, and the position of the camera was on the ground behind the rear jack man, and that car was moving around on its jacks as the tyres were going on. That doesn't look good.
Doesn't look good, and it's interesting you actually mention that, because I don't know if you saw any of the Formula 2 race.
I know, I missed them all.
My God, was I treated to some of the worst pit crewing I have ever seen on not just one car, no, on 3 separate cars, 2 of them at the same time with separate teams in the same fucking pit lane. But it was this issue, and even the Formula 2 cars were rocking on their jacks. So I don't know whether anything's been mandated or changed that's altered it, because I know previously we used to have a chap either side rested on the car stabilising it.
They did, yeah, you're right.
So I didn't see those chaps, in fairness, but I wasn't really looking for them. So I'd have to look back and see the pit stops again to see if those guys were there holding them still. Because I know that Formula 2 especially have this problem, because they are regulated on how many people can work on the car at the time.
Yes.
So you've only got 1 person on each wheel and the 2 jackmen. That's it. That's all you've got. You don't have anyone else involved. You're not allowed. And you're only allowed 12 engineers to work on the car in a race weekend as well. Very weird limitations, but it's to keep costs down and all that kind of stuff. What happened is, it was much the same. There was issues in Formula 1 with this, where they were trying to get the tyre on and it just wouldn't go on. The McLaren, a prime example, there was a right rear that just, on Lando's car, that just wouldn't go on. They really got stuck with it for a bit. Same issue in Formula 2, but every single wheel that had the problem was the front left wheel. Now, there was a lot of slow pit stops where they just couldn't get the front left wheel to go on. They just couldn't get it to go. But 3 cars made some serious fuck-ups. So, one in particular, he came into the pits. They tried to do the tyre change, and it took them about 4 or 5 goes to actually finally get it on. But what I still don't understand in this, so this is this first pit stop that we saw. The front jackman could see that the wheel wasn't even, it wasn't fully slid on. He could see it was on and still dropped the car off the fucking jack. So then they're there scrambling, trying to get this fucking wheel on. And then he'll sort of like dazedly, there was like, it must have been, I was looking at the pit timer, must have been about a 3-second delay for him to go, oh, I need to raise the car again. And he raised the car again. They got the wheel on. You could just see the mechanics all having a go at each other and all that kind of stuff and slapping their helmets and all that kind of shit. That car went out on track.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his pit stop done. And off he went. I think that was Yuri Vips who was leading at the time, and it cost him massively. He ended up finishing third, like 5 seconds down the road, so it cost him essentially a win.
Okay.
Then we had two other fucking. I don't even know how it happened. We have two guys who are obviously battling for position on track, and they come in. Now, I understand in this sort of situation, pit crews are going to be desperate to get their man out of the pits first and try and get the position. Natural thing, understandable. I get that. But when you're the front jackman, and you know they sort of come to the side, don't they? They lower it and then it twists to the side.
Yes,
so they can just
then they get out of the way because they release it from the handles and then scoot.
Yeah, and they just yank it out of the way. Their view is clearly on what's coming down the pit lane at an angle where they've got the front jackman, like the front tyre man, in sight. This, honestly, my God. So they get the car up on the jacks. He goes to the side. They're there and they're like, right, one wheel off. And you can see that they're struggling with the weight of these new wheels because the Formula 2's wheels are the same weight. They're 23 kilograms each wheel. 23 kilograms. That's substantial when you're trying to hold a tyre gun and pull all that kind of stuff out. He then lifts the new wheel and he's trying to get it on. And as he's slid the wheel on, he's grabbed his tyre gun. He's attached the tyre gun. But before, at this point, he's still pushing in. The fucking jackman releases the car. And the tyre gun is still attached to the side of the wheel. And it gets ripped out of the hands of the mechanic. And also then flings around in the bloody pit lane. But because the wheel's not attached, as the tyre gun gets, because obviously it's on that extendable hose, as that goes taut, it pulls the fucking wheel off and the wheel goes bouncing into the pit wall and narrowly misses some photographers. And the car, because he's already started moving forwards, is then literally, where he's obviously not got a front left tyre, it's just speared round and he is literally sideways in the pit lane, nose against the pit wall, which means the other cars in the pit lane have to go around the car into another team's pit box to get round the back of it to get out of the pit lane. At the same time as this is going on, the other car that's also in the pits has the same fucking issue, and they drop him off the jacks and he goes to go as well, and the fucking wheel's not on properly, and that was it. They eventually get him going again, but he goes down the pit lane. He has to go round. I think it was Deruvala, the Red Bull Junior driver, was the one that actually got out of the pits, but the guy in front of him, fucking calamitous, absolutely calamitous. I've never seen anything like it. It was such horrendous, pit stop work. It just makes me think, with the issues we've seen with these new 18-inch wheels, and Formula 2 already having them, and they're all having issues, there's got to be some change somewhere to help mitigate this, because...
Well, when you're still aiming for 2-second pit stops,
and I know they tried to bring those regulations to slow them down, but how can you legitimately slow down
the only thing that would slow them down is refueling.
Yeah.
If refueling was to be brought back, it doesn't matter if you can change the tyres in 2 seconds if the car's sat there for 10.
Yeah.
But I just want to double check something, because I always love a good metaphor. Did you say they were 22 kilos?
23 kilograms.
20. Okay. So 22 kilos is about 48.5 pounds. Okay.
Okay.
To put that into perspective, an average 6-year-old boy is 45 pounds. So you're talking about one of those tyres weighs about the same as a 6 or 7-year-old child.
Yeah.
Now, anyone who's has children in their family or is a parent who knows what it's like. I mean, my wife hands me our 15-month-old and says, "Can you put him to bed? Because I can't carry him and me up the stairs. It hurts my knees." So, try to carry a 6 or a 7-year-old
And
and
bearing in
attach it
mind,
to a car.
well, this is it, and you're trying to get that little round hole in the middle of the tire to go smoothly onto the the axle and everything of the fucking car, the mounting area. It's just, you know,
Yeah. We could see some incidents there, particularly if a car. But to be honest, I'm more worried about a car falling off its jack. But a car leaving without a wheel attached, we've seen that plenty of times. It's fraught with danger because a wheel that heavy coming off a car at 200 miles an hour down a straight when they hit the braking zone and going off into the fans, that's deadly.
Yeah, 23 kilograms plus the speed and force that it comes off of. And the photographers were lucky. That there was a slight raise. You know where they step up onto the pit wall. It just caught that and bounced it onto its side, so it stopped its momentum. If it had sort of bounced up, it would have bounced up to head height. Undoubtedly. So they got fucking lucky. And it was just absolutely clamorous. If you get a chance, and for anyone watching as well, if you get a chance, go and have a look at the Formula 2 highlights from that feature race. With the whole pit stops, it was shocking. On the subject of shocking, actually, there is one special mention I want to make from Formula 2.
Okay.
It's a British driver, Ollie Caldwell. Okay.
Right.
Now, first, the sprint race he retired from, he got punted out, and the car, well, I say he got punted out, he got punted. The car, I think, went round, but he didn't catch the clutch, so he stalled the engine, race over, job done.
Yeah.
And he wasn't looking any happier about it. I think that's how it happened. I know he was involved in all kinds of shit. Feature race. He gets it comes up. He's got a warning for track limits. So the team literally on the team radio comes up. Ollie got a warning for track limits at turn 4. Don't do it again. Very next lap goes out there. Right, Ollie, you've got a 10-second penalty. And he was just like, for what? For what? Kind of got getting really angry. He's like, I only done it once. It's like, yeah, you've done it once more since we told you not to fucking do it because you've had a warning for track limits. So he comes in for his pit stop and serves. They have to wait 10 seconds before they can work on the car.
Yeah, of course.
So fair is fair. Tough fucking shit. Goes back out there within 2 laps. Goes outside the track limits. Gets another 10-second penalty. And then there's a safety car, so they decide to box him again for fresh tyres, as you would.
Yeah, of course.
So he comes in, pulls into the box, has to wait again. They do the tyre change. He gets back out there on track. Safety car ends. What's he do? Goes straight back outside of the limits at turn 4 again. Gets a drive-through penalty this time, so more severe. So it's like, right, okay, we're not just going to give you a time add-on. You're now going to have to drive through the fucking pits. It's like, you've served your 2 10-second penalties. You're not learning. Drive-through penalty. Comes through the drive-through penalty. And at that point, he was so far behind the team, just retired him. And they were just like, no, let's just fucking stop. He, as weekends go, he had probably the worst. And he also had a botched pit stop where they couldn't get the wheel on as well.
Well, let's hope for better for Ollie then. Jesus.
He was running 10th as well. He was in the top 10. He was going to score some points. He was going to score points, and his head went. Awful driving. Awful. I've never seen anything like it. Just constantly popping up. He's got a penalty. He's got a penalty. I would have loved to have heard the full team radio. I think that would have made my day.
Yeah. Well, it's a learning experience. That's a lot of what F2 was about, isn't it? So let's hope he can learn from it.
Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, though. Let's go to something great and magnificent and fantastic, and talk about the resurgence of the Phoenix Haas. The Phoenix rising from the fucking ashes. Let's talk about Mr. K. Magnussen and that. Oh,
I am actually.
Are you feeding a cat?
I'm looking for something. K-Mag, I'm chuffed for K-Mag. Don't get me wrong. I am chuffed for K-Mag. I'm actually, though, I hate to be the negative Norman here. I'm a little bit more concerned at the delta between him and Mick.
In general lap time or in quality?
Well, in the race. Mick Mick was looking on for points at the end because he was running in 10th, and then Alonso and
Yeah,
Zhao Guan Yu got him.
but
So he's brought it home 11th, whereas K-Mag's brought it home 5th. There's a reasonable difference between the two.
okay.
Um,
There are two very valid reasons for that.
Here we go.
Okay, so I'm not fucking charging in as the savior of Mick Schumacher.
Yeah, you are.
Because I think he has seeing him against K-Mag, he has still got a long way to go. He's kind of doing that Mick Schumacher thing. He's taking his time to get there, and in Formula One, you can't necessarily take too long past your first sort of season and a half, so to speak.
No, and we should caveat this by saying you and I have both said previously that we are both fans of Mick. We think he's doing a really good job.
And he's a nice guy as well. He's just a generally all-round nice guy. And that goes a long way. Because he's done things his way, not his dad's way. You know, he's focused on himself because he wants to do it for him. And that's great. What we didn't see initially, is I was completely unaware of, was when you saw obviously Ocon punt him round in a bloody circle at the beginning. We didn't see that until the replays because it was like bizarre because there was like this gap, wasn't there, between two groups of cars, and I was like, how the fuck have they got suddenly like how are they all clustered together like that? And as it turns out, Ocon was being Ocon, and you know, sending it where it wasn't needed. But Haas didn't pit him under the safety car, so he went to the end. So he was already on. When the safety car came out, his tyres were already 11 laps old, and he had to take him to the end because they didn't pit him. I'm not being funny.
Okay.
I would think they're probably ruining the decision not to pit him now, because when the two Red Bulls dropped out, he probably could have brought home some points there because he would have had fresh tyres on the car and been a bit more punchier. Everyone else pitted. He didn't. I don't know. Is that Haas's rustiness?
I mean, it's a free
calls?
pit stop. You do it regardless, don't you?
Just do it. Yeah, exactly. Like they pitted Magnussen. They were delayed in bringing Magnussen in. They waited a lap before bringing Magnussen in, and that was a risky thing because if he had caught the safety car at the wrong point, that would have scuppered his race as well. So I think there's some rustiness there in Haas. I know they haven't been on these lofty heights for quite some time, but when it's a safety car, just box your driver and get the fresh tyres on, because you're better off having something fresh to either defend on or attack on than having something that's 20 laps old. As we saw, and I hate to mention it, as we saw in Abu Dhabi, when you're on 40-odd old hard compound tyres versus fresher, softer compound.
You're toothless. There's no other word for it. You're absolutely toothless at that point.
And poor old Mick, coupled with the heating issues that we already know with these tyres, you're then trying to get worn tyres up to temperature against guys who have all just come out of the pits with nice, fresh rubber on their car. He was kind of like, he had nothing left. Then he dropped right back because the tyres there was something mentioned about it, but his tyres actually dropped off the cliff on the last lap, so he was crawling round, literally crawling to the end. And
Might have been crawling round, but he still finished 13 seconds ahead of Lance Stroll.
Yes, good. Fucking good. As you guys well know, we also do not like Lance Stroll either.
No, we don't. No, not a fan.
Not a fan. No, he... I was gutted that Hulkenberg finished behind Lance. But Hulkenberg had a host of issues in his race.
He did. I mean, Hulk was ahead of Lance for the vast majority of the race, and then the issues started to come in later. Yeah. But still, you know, he outqualified Lance, and he led. He was in front of him for most of the race. For a man that is not a week in, week out Formula One driver anymore, although we both agree he absolutely should be. He deserves a space on this grid. Yeah. To step in, having not really tested the car, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, he's had no seat time,
as he always does.
You know, he's had no seat time, and much like, what was it, Gunther said about K-Mag, it came out with an absolute cracker, did Gunther, in the post-race stuff. He said, when he was asked about what he thought of K-Mag's performance, he said, it's just fucking brilliant. You know, he's like, he hasn't even sat in an F1 car for 14 months.
Yeah.
And he's right. He hasn't sat in an F1 car for 14 bloody months, and he's gone and stuck it fifth at the end. Okay, by virtue of some luck, but he was still getting solid points.
Well,
He was still getting solid points.
Yeah, he had he have not had that luck, he still would have brought the car home a solid 7th.
Yes, he would.
Which for a car that didn't finish higher than 15th last year, and that was through retirements of people around them rather than their own pace, that's immense.
That's immense. Yeah, and I loved Gunther because he furthered his statement by saying, if he had been driving an F1 car for the last 40 months, we would have had a fucking podium. Just great. And I think, had Hulkenberg had a full, series of testing under his belt, he probably would have been in even better shape.
I agree. I agree. But there was some good drives up and down the grid. I mean, I suspect we're sort of naturally migrating towards our end of race scoring. But Bottas, I don't know what the hell happened to Bottas at the start. He went backwards quickly.
He was slow off the grid as well. Really bad off the grid. Really poor.
But he made it all the way back, finished in P6, That was a really good showing. And again, it shows that the Ferrari engined cars are doing well, but equally, it's not just the car.
It's not.
It's the man behind the wheel, because you've got K-Mag in 5th and Bottas in 6th.
Yes.
K-Mag's teammate Mick Schumacher came home 11th. Bottas's teammate Zhao Guanyu came home in 10th. So there is a difference there of a fair few places between them.
Yeah, there is. Also, special mention to Bottas. 102 consecutive qualifying free appearances.
Yes, so on that note, I made some notes of some stats that came up during the race as well.
That's incredible, frankly. That record, I mean, are we going to see that beaten? I mean, that's incredible. That's going to take some time.
There's a few records now that we're going to struggle to beat. Yeah. So that was Ferrari's first win in 46 races.
Yeah, 900 and something days, wasn't it? Something like
that. Yeah, which is a long time for a team like Ferrari.
Yeah.
And that was also Lewis's 183rd podium.
Wow. Isn't he got like a 50% podium ratio or something in his career? It's close, isn't it?
Something ridiculous like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, they were stats that Crofty threw out during the F1 coverage, and I thought I've got to write those down because that's amazing. But I feel a little bit for Ferrari. We know the Tifosi and what they're like, and God rest his soul. If Enzo was still around, he would have been pulling his hair out for the last few years.
Yes.
So I'm glad to see them back and up amongst it. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see them being the one and only car and no one can catch them. So I'm glad Red Bull are there or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mercedes seem confident that they know what the issue is with the car and it can be resolved, hopefully.
Take some time, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some Spec B cars coming out later this year. Well, and I'm looking at teams like Aston Martin, who they need to turn something around sharpish. So do McLaren.
Well, I was going to say, McLaren on race pace were horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. They had nothing. Whether it was soft tyres, mediums, hards, they just...
And you know what? We talked earlier about the fact that these lowest finishing cars were all Mercedes powered. But the Mercedes proper came home 3rd and 4th. Yes, by a bit of luck with Max and Checo not finishing the race, but they came home 3rd and 4th.
By and large, the 3rd best car on the grid.
Yeah. But how can the Mercedes proper be the 3rd best car on the grid and every other Mercedes customer be so far lower down if the engine is the problem?
Well, then I'd say that Mercedes have got a good chassis then.
But McLaren historically have had amazing chassis. When they had those poor Honda engines that weren't producing any power and broke down every 2 minutes, the chassis was impeccable. It was one of the best on the grid.
Yeah.
So I just don't prescribe to that. For all three of them to have got it that badly wrong, I just don't get it. There's something missing there. Now, what I will say is, I think it was after... I'm trying to think who it was I saw Lewis overtake. Might have been Zhao Guanyu after Lewis's second pit stop. So yes, it was. So he came out the pits and Zhao got past him during the sorting out between the first couple of corners. Lewis caught him around the next lap and then got him on the pit straight with DRS. Now, what I noticed was Zhao didn't defend that. Yeah. Rightly so. It wasn't worth defending. He's going to hold himself up and hold Lewis up. What's the point?
Yeah.
But the Mercedes didn't streak past. he was ahead by the time you got to the braking zone. But if you look at Max Verstappen against the Ferrari, or the Ferrari-powered cars going past people, they seem to power past, which again would lead to the fact that the Mercedes engine isn't as powerful as the others. But I'm not sure. I don't
Well,
know.
usually some information Ted usually finds some information about this stuff as the season goes
Hmm.
on. He's pretty much the golden boy for that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping as we get into this that he starts to, you know, piece
Hmm.
it together, that we can, I don't know, pry on that information a little bit, or maybe even bits will get revealed about each car. We don't know yet. You know, as the season goes on, it's because it's the first race. You know, we're early days.
Yeah, yeah, we
Um,
are. We are.
but like you say about the B spec cars, when was the last time we had an era of B spec cars? I mean, bloody hell.
Early 90s, really, wasn't
Oh,
it? Back in the day. It was back in the day when you still had T cars.
yeah, well, yeah.
Uh, Ferrari. Ferrari in the late 90s, Michael Schumacher started one of his championship winning seasons with last year's championship winning car because they hadn't finished the development of the new car.
Oh, that was '96, wasn't it? When he first moved there, they still
I think
used
it was
to.
later than that.
Was it?
I think it was later than that.
Ooh.
In fact, I tell you what, Wikipedia is very good for this.
Yeah.
So if I look up Michael Schumacher and go to his wiki, the race results that come up for drivers show the car that they were in, usually.
Yes.
You watch, it's not going to now.
It's not going to, is it?
Typically, it doesn't. It just says Formula One, Scuderia, Ferrari. Okay. So I'll have to. Oh, no. I've got it.
Yeah.
It's a bit further down. So, yeah, so he started the 2003 season with the
Okay.
F2002
Bloody hell. Wow.
and then moved to the F2003 GA later in the year, which was for the Canadian Grand Prix by the looks of it, or possibly the Spanish.
Just goes to show how good their 2002 car was, then, doesn't it?
Did it again in 2005. They started 2005 with the F2004 and moved to the 2005 for the third race.
Yeah, and that was kind of a decline then from Ferrari compared to Renault. They didn't get that right. They didn't get that new technical regulations right.
No, you're
But,
right. They didn't. But yeah,
interesting
that
though.
for me is probably the last time we saw mid-season changes. But that was more because their new car wasn't ready,
Yeah,
rather than their existing car wasn't doing
good
anything.
enough.
It was the Williams, the FW13, FW13B is the one that I remember for mid-season changes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's. I mean, obviously the aerodynamicists have already said that releasing a B spec car would basically be the only way to go about changes and stuff
Yeah.
because everything is so regulated and intricately linked that they would have to design a large part of it to put it on. So
Yeah. If it's fundamentally baked into how the car
Yeah.
is, then you've got no other option.
no other option. And looking at how that McLaren and Aston Martin were, I would say get on it now, boys, because you've got it a bit wrong. I mean, obviously, if they then release a B-spec car and get it right, then poor old Williams are going to be suffering. I mean, I was a bit disappointed with Williams. I had such hope that they would have brought a better car to the table. But, Albon was doing all right in it. He was getting stuck into overtakes and that, but he wasn't anywhere near the points.
Wasn't what we'd hoped.
No, we wanted to see Williams back up there, in contention. But
Yeah.
gonna be honest, a man that also showed his weakness though, Latifi didn't look. He looked all at sea this race.
He did. He really did.
Not good.
I think his days are numbered in F1. I just don't see it. I mean, Albon's come in and outperformed him here. I mean, maybe it's too early after just the first race of the season, but he's not bringing enough to the table anymore. He's just not.
No, he's not, and it's a shame because, like I say, he's a safe pair of hands. But what good is a safe pair of hands if you need someone in that car that's gonna get the points as and when they come available? In those situations that George Russell seized the moments. And at the moment, again, Williams going to largely be relying on Albon to try and fill those shoes.
Yeah, very much.
I don't know. Well, shall we move across to our rankings? Go through the drivers?
Yeah,
Shall we go
let's do that.
Let's do that. Let's bring that across then. Okay. So, right, I'm going to bring that onto the screen. So it's going to cover our faces a little bit, I think. I'm just going to shrink it down because I don't need it that bloody big. Oh, God. Well, I need it bigger than that, though.
Of course, I can't see it, so you're going to have to talk me through it.
Yeah, I will do, as I do all the time. So don't you worry, darling. Don't you worry.
Is it going to be the same one you were doing on stream earlier?
No, I've got a new purpose-built one, like I said.
Ah, good man.
And whoever created this, thank you very much, because they have also included all of the test drivers for each of the teams in case they also race.
Ooh.
So this is good.
Clever.
Because we've had a reserve driver in one of the cars this weekend. So that makes it a little bit better. So I think, you know, I'm trying to think what order to do this in. We'll go in with Ferrari. We'll go with the race order. So Charles Leclerc. Let's go in with Mr. Charles Leclerc.
So what are my scoring options here? How am I scoring?
To give you the talk through. Okay, you've got God tier performance. You've got a very good performance. You've got good, distinctly average, very poor, or pile of utter ...
Can we just rename that last one Nikita Mazepin?
Do you know what? Do you know what? I actually can. Right, let me there we go.
There's going to be a Russian hit on me at the end of this.
We'll call this Mazepins of the Day. There we go. It's beautiful. Okay, yeah, it's done. It's there.
Okay, so we're diving straight in then with Ferrari, yes?
Yeah, we're going straight in with our race winner, Mr. Charles Leclerc.
God's here.
Yeah.
No other way for it. He led the race from start to finish. He looked comfortable. He was unflustered. He had to really fight tooth and nail with it, with Max Verstappen for it, and he got it straight back within a couple of corners. He owned that race. He was spot on.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I predicted a Charles Leclerc win before the race got underway, and he handled everything Verstappen threw at him. No matter what Verstappen chucked at him, he handled it, and he came back stronger. The battle for the lead, case in point, you know, Verstappen was chucking in some wild lunges down the inside, and he was just like, okay, I'll just get you back on the next straight, you know. And, you know, the way he sort of firmly chopped across the front of Verstappen on the last one was very nice. That was a nice sort of, no, I want this win. This is mine.
And he was showing, I'm not afraid. I'm not going to back down to you. And that, I think, is really important. Set that stall out early.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, and plus it lets Max know that, okay, this guy, he's not fucking around. He's I'm going to have to actually fight for this. So, yeah, really, really good with the standard of driving. And I don't think he actually really made any mistakes at all, did he, Leclerc? He
not that I saw.
He got his head down and got on with it.
Yeah, it was a great race from Charles. I was really impressed. I mean, I've got a lot of time for Charles Leclerc as it is, but no, I was very impressed.
Very impressed. Yeah, it's kind of like he's matured a lot in the 2 years of hardship that Ferrari have had, and made him better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, brings us to Carlos then. You know, a solid performance from Carlos as well.
Yeah, so this is where I start to differ from the results that were given to you earlier. I think Carlos gets a very good.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think you can put him in the same tier as Charles. No. I think up until the safety car was deployed for Gasly's incident or Gasly's breakdown, there was quite a big delta between them. And Carlos is a great driver. He did well. He brought it home as a 1-2, but he was a little fortuitous to get the 1-2.
Yes.
Charles outperformed him. Yeah, very good, I think, is where I'd put him.
Yeah. And, you know, I think he's done a good job since being at Ferrari. A little bit behind Leclerc this weekend, but, you know, different drivers are going to handle these kind of regulation changes differently. It seems Leclerc's got fully on top of things and firing on all cylinders. Whatever Ferrari have done, it really suits Leclerc this year.
Yeah,
but I also think, you know, seeing how Sainz was, I do think that there's going to be certain tracks this year that will suit him as well. So,
I agree.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. Well, the seven-time champ, Lewis Hamilton, third place. Very lucky, but I think probably the best Mercedes could have hoped for.
I would agree. So Lewis gets good for me. Not very good, but good. Because there were some good battles. He got his elbows out and he got involved a little time. He didn't really look like he had anything to fight Perez with when Perez went past him earlier in the race. How much of that is the car? I think, well, I suspect a lot of it is the car, but either way, based on his standards, Mercedes standards, I think good as good as I can give him.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see.
Spoiler alert: George is getting the same.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was going to say we'll see if at some point in the season Lewis can continue his record of winning a race in every year of his career. That's going to be a tall order this year. George,
see how that Merc looks.
Yeah, so George going with the same then. Oh, Georgie boy.
I am. There wasn't really a huge amount to pick between them. I mean, I'm just looking at the fastest laps during the race. So Lewis, fastest race lap was a 136.228. George was a 136.302. There's a fag paper between them.
Yeah.
George was there or thereabouts. The only thing that I think George did better than Lewis was he seemed to deal with the hard tyres better.
Yes.
But the finishing position is behind Lewis. He never really looked like he was going to challenge and get past at any point, but there or thereabouts. So he gets a good for me as well, particularly because that's his first. Well, I was going to say this is his first run in the car, and Brundle said this on the grid as well, but of course it's not because he was in, and it was at Bahrain, wasn't it?
At Bahrain on the outer loop, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So yeah, but no, I think he had a good showing, just not outstanding.
Not spectacular. Not pulling up any trees there today, in my opinion, but he kept himself out of trouble and brought the car home for some points. And at this stage, Mercedes need to just take as many as they can get until they get the fix in.
Absolutely.
It's one of those. Okay, so P5 then, Kevin Magnussen for Haas.
So generally speaking, I would tend to think you only get one God tier drive per weekend, but actually I'm going to give two. I think K-Mag gets one as well. I think after being out for so long and coming into a car that, regardless of where we think it is this year, has been a tail ender for the past 3 or 4 years back to back.
And no testing.
That was cracking.
And no testing.
Exactly.
First time he sat his ass in the car. Well, I say no testing. He did get a bit of running in, but it wasn't any substantial. It wasn't like he had Spain and then Bahrain. He's got a call at the last minute because Mazepin has gone, and it's like, right, we need you. He's done well, and he's got up to speed very bloody quickly.
He has. Fair play to him. It was a cracking result, cracking showing.
Yeah. Well, it brings us to Bottas next. Obviously, a cracking qualifying from him. Really good qualifying. Just the beginning of the race, he disappeared.
I've yo-yoed a little bit here. I'm actually going to go for just good rather than very good for Valtteri. And I'm going to drop him from a very good, one, for whatever the hell happens to him at the beginning of the race.
Yeah.
And two, for the fact that actually, I think Valtteri should have finished ahead of K-Mag. I think he's got the skill, the car to have done so. I would have expected the Alpha to be a bit higher up. So
I mean, the way that the Alpha came back throughout the race suggested the race pace was good in the car. So whatever he done at the start cost him big time. Whatever happened there. I agree. Yeah. Even on the restart on the safety car, he didn't look like he was really challenging K-Mag. He just, I don't know what was going on. I kind of thought, oh, he's behind him now. He's probably going to give this a go, and just didn't quite get there. It took a while to get past Alex Albon as well early on in the race, and because we were watching that on the TV cameras for quite some time, and it was just like, Valtteri, are you going to get past this bloody Williams, or like what? Like, come on, you need to start cracking the whip a little bit here.
Absolutely.
Crikey, who finished next in the race? Who finished seventh? Who finished?
Esteban.
It was Esteban. Oh, Mr. Ocon, Mr. Punterino.
Please no Punterino, Esteban.
Yes.
So that was an average drive for me. I mean, P7's about where I'd expect the Alpines, give or take. Yeah, he finished ahead of Fernando, but he was sort of absent in the race. There was very rarely any
Yeah,
television footage of Ocon
there
doing
was
things.
just footage of the two Alpines following line astern. It was just like, oh,
Yeah,
well, they're just plodding to the end.
yeah, I think it was a very average performance.
Yeah, well, he brought it home in points though, so I mean Alpine will be happy with that, I guess. But
Hmm.
you know, hey ho. P. Wait, what are we on? Seventh. P.
So we're down to P8 now. We're down to Yuki.
Mr. Yuki Tsunoda. I'm still on the fence with Yuki. I don't really know what I make of him at the moment. He's
Me
so
too.
up and down. He's sometimes he turns up, other times he's just gone, and
Yeah,
then if he's not gone, he's in a wall. So
yeah, yeah. And I think this was a very average weekend from Yuki Tsunoda as well. I mean,
he's
if you look at
behind
the
Gasly
qualifying,
all
he
the
was
time, wasn't
16th in qualifying against 10th for Pierre Gasly.
he? Yeah,
We know Gasly's an immense driver and is outperforming that car. Don't get me wrong, but that therefore is the standard that Yuki has to match, and he
yeah.
just doesn't.
No, he doesn't, and he was behind Gasly for all the race as well. Gasly. In fairness, I mean, heartbreak for Gasly because he was like up there, right in a points-paying position, and
Yeah.
uh,
He's looked quick all the way through testing, all
yeah,
the
he
way through free
has.
practice.
He has. He's again. I think maybe a little bit outperforming where that car is. I don't know. He just seems to drag performance
Mm,
out somewhere.
yeah, I agree.
Um, P
9,
nine. Yeah, that. Ah,
Fernando.
the Isle of Fernando. Yes, go on.
So I think I'm going to be really harsh on scores for basically everyone to come. So just to measure expectations, that was an average for me for Fernando. He's a two-time world champion, and he couldn't outperform his own teammate. He was 2 places behind his own teammate. It was meh,
Yeah,
meh.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I'm with you. I didn't see anything from Fernando that, because obviously the talk was before the season. Oh, what if Alpine provide Alonso with a good car? Does he have it still to get a world title? And everyone was like, oh yeah, yeah, he'll get a third world title. And I didn't see anything there actually that put him even above Ocon.
No.
He was missing that cutthroat edge that Alonso used to have. I think he lacked that, and
Yeah.
maybe he's coming to the end. It is the last year of his contract.
I mean, with Kimi Raikkonen gone, he's now the elder statesman on the grid, isn't he?
Well,
So
he'll
yeah,
have the
probably.
record for most races started by the end, by halfway in the season. He will have overtaken Kimi's record.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
there's a stat for you. So he will be the new record holder for most Grand Prix. So that says it all. He's coming to the end.
Yeah, very
Um,
much so.
okay, 10th place, Mr. Joe, as it's they pronounced it Joe on the broadcast, so I'm just going to say Joe.
So
Gangyu Joe.
I've yin-yanged a little bit here between average and
Mm.
good. I'm gonna give him a good, and I'm gonna do that because this is his first Formula One Grand Prix. He's equally got the weight of a nation on his shoulders because he's the
First
first
Chinese driver.
Chinese Formula One
Yeah,
driver, isn't he?
yes he is.
Um, and to finish in the points in your first Grand Prix, yeah, you might have been 4 positions behind your teammate. Maybe there was more to come from you, but he was pretty quick. He did okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for from what I saw of him, he made some nice, clean, tidy overtakes.
Hmm.
He didn't put himself in, at risk of binning it in the wall.
Mhm.
Reacted to Hamilton's kerfuffle through the opening corners and got round him quite, you know, cleanly. He
Mhm.
didn't hang about. He was like, no, I'll just nip around the outside of you here. He looked quite. I felt he was quite assured of himself there. Once he got into the
Hmm.
rhythm, he looked solid. And
Yeah.
I think that the more experience he gets, the Alpha could actually have a decent little peddler there.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I know he's got bags of money, and he is, for all intents and purposes, a paid driver because he's paid
Yeah.
a rumored $30 million for that seat this season, largely
Ouch. Okay.
funded by Chinese enterprises and all that kind of stuff because he's the first successful one they've had.
Mm.
24 podiums and 5 wins in Formula 2 over 2 seasons. It's not bad, you know.
It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. I always thought he'd go to Renault, but
Well, yeah.
I understand why he hasn't gone to Renault. Obviously, well, Alpine, because they want Ocon in the car because he's French,
Yes.
and Alonso is obviously a hero to the Renault team, and he's a great driver. I was just thinking though, when Alonso inevitably retires, here's an early prediction: when Alonso retires at the end of this season,
Hmm.
Pierre Gasly to take that seat at Alpine and an all French lineup between Gasly and Ocon.
I'm going to counter your offer.
Go on.
Alpine obviously have the Formula 2 world champion Oscar Piastri as their reserve. I would say Piastri. I'm putting my money on Piastri.
Okay.
Mm.
We'll have a pint riding on it.
Or we could both.
You can't have three.
No.
Hang on.
No. The next one's good. We could both be right, and it'll be a Gasly Piastri lineup, and Ocon gets the boot.
I'd like that
I
more.
would like that more.
I would like that more. Yeah. Let's hope that happens.
Let's just do that. Fuck it. Shall we just go and run Alpine? There you go. Decision made. Alonso, you retire, mate.
Actually, on that note, speaking of running Alpine, Flavio Briatore was all over the grid walk today.
Yeah, wasn't he just? Did you hear Martin's little quip? He's like, "Oh,
didn't.
Flavio, my old boss." He said, "Last time I probably saw you was when you fired me."
Yeah. To which Flavio was enigmatic as always, like, "Martin, you're looking well. You've lost weight."
Yeah. Ah, Flavio
Yeah.
Briatore. My God, how he's ever been allowed back in a paddock, I don't know. But hey.
Yeah, he's paid someone.
P11 then.
Anywho,
P11.
Mick. So again, I've yin-yanged a little bit with Mick, but I'm going to go for good. That's the highest he's ever finished in a Formula One race. It's the highest he's ever brought home a Haas car. And actually, from what I did see of him on the track, there was some good stuff.
There was some good stuff. I think the team again left him out to dry a little bit on the strategy. That was a bit unfair.
Yeah, based on what you're saying about the pit strategy, that is, and you can see it. He is the only car to finish the race that stopped twice. Everyone else stopped 3 times.
Yeah, they left him out to dry. It's a safety car. Just pit him. Seriously, you know. End of.
Yeah, absolutely.
The worst thing was, if they'd pitted him, he would have been last of the cars on the lead lap, which still would have been around P12, P13, because all the other guys were lapped. So why not? Why not just pit him, put him on fresh rubber, and let him go and have some fun?
Yeah, I agree.
Obviously, he probably would have been higher in qualifying as well, but he made a mistake on his last run as well, so aborted it and dived in the pits, which is a shame because I think had he hooked that lap up, who knows? Different world, different game,
Indeed.
P12, that was Lance Stroll, wasn't it?
So this is where it all starts to get very easy for me. So Lance Stroll, very poor.
Yeah, very poor.
I mean, I know we're not especially fans of Lance himself, and I do think actually the car has a lot to say for this.
Yes, but he was outperformed by Hulkenberg. Yes.
He was. Yeah. He was outperformed by Hulkenberg most of the weekend. So yeah, absolutely, it was a poor showing.
Yeah, Hulkenberg, his first time in the car is practice, and yet goes faster. I'm sorry, Stroll, but you're not cutting the mustard.
Yeah, something not right there.
No. P13, who have we got?
Alex Albon.
Oh, Mr. Albon in the Williams.
I'm going to say that was a poor showing as well. Again, it could be a lot down to the car and the Williams itself, but yeah, it wasn't strong. Wasn't a strong debut in that car for him.
No, I just saw him repeatedly getting overtaken. It was a shame, really, because he was. You could see he was trying. He was trying to defend, but I don't know. Just
had nothing.
Just had
nothing to give.
And to be honest, the Williams just looked like it didn't have anything to give. So yeah, it's a shame. Another season of struggle, unfortunately, for the Grove team.
Looks like it.
So not what we want. And there was rumours last season that Doralton Capital were already looking to sell the team on again. I think if they sell Williams on, that'll be it. I don't think anyone's going to come forwards with a serious enough offer. Who can turn that team around apart from someone with trillions? You need like an Amazon to buy them or something and fund them.
You would.
They've already sold off all their facilities and their collection of cars,
Yeah.
so they haven't really got much in terms of capital left. So
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a shame. It's a shame.
It is.
So below Albon, we've got in
Danny
P13,
Rick.
Danny Rick.
So this one hurts a little bit,
Mm,
but I'm going to give Danny Rick the Mazepin award.
yeah, shocking.
It was a really
Yeah,
poor performance, not only from McLaren, but from Danny
just from
himself.
Danny. Yeah,
He looked out of sorts all weekend. You know, he qualified 18th.
yeah, and largely
Um,
ran back there for most of the race.
yeah, he was.
You
He was
know,
bringing up the rear for the vast
the
majority of it.
I
Yeah.
mean, the most I saw of Danny Rick on TV was when he was squabbling with Nicholas Bloody Latifi. In what world is Danny Rick with Nicholas Latifi? That's just horrendous.
It's not right, is it?
No, it's not. Okay, P14.
So P15 is Lando.
P15, sorry. Lando. Okay, the two McLaren boys. Lando.
So Lando has to get a very poor as
Yeah.
well. Again, I think the car is mainly to blame here. The reason I'm giving Lando very poor, which is a better score than Danny Rick, who ultimately was ahead of him, is because actually Lando was ahead of Danny Rick for the vast majority of the
Yeah.
race. It was a nasty pit stop that caused him to be behind at the end.
Yes.
And he outqualified him by what, 5 places? Yeah, he was
Yeah.
5 places higher in qualifying. But still, really worrying for McLaren, who'd spent years getting back to a strong position. Of course, won a race last year.
Yeah.
Danny Rick winning the race of all
Yeah.
things.
Had a pole position as well. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
You know?
Lando was really punchy all year last year. Looked like he was going to get his first race win. So I'm gutted to see them going backwards again. And I hope whatever the issue is, they can fix.
Another team that has mortgaged off all their properties and everything as well. So,
Mm.
at a time when they've invested heavily in expanding globally into other series as well, not what you want from your flagship to be
No.
suddenly, oh, we're at the back of the fucking field. Not good. Not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Next on the list.
Nicholas Latifi
Oh,
in
dear.
P16.
Jesus fucking Christ.
He's going to get my second Mazepin award.
Yay, Mazepin of the day. Yes, agreed. He showed me nothing. I would have been better off putting a cabbage behind the wheel and it would have done a better job.
So here's the thing for me with Latifi, apart from the fact that he brought up the rear for most of the day, he qualified in P20.
Yeah, he was miles
His
off the back as well,
fastest
wasn't he?
lap of the race was a 1:38.251. That's 4 seconds off the fastest lap set by Charles Leclerc. But also, very importantly, it's basically a full second off of Alex Albon's fastest lap in the same car, in the same machinery. That says something.
Not being funny, the last time we had a teammates deficit of a second was the teammates constantly getting replaced alongside Verstappen.
Yeah.
And Nikita Mazepin. Let's not forget him as well. Hence the award.
Yeah, absolutely.
Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. You know, I love the guy. He's a really nice guy, but he's looking out of his depth now. Fully looking out of his depth.
Yeah, he really is.
Who's behind him? Who have we got on there?
Nico.
Yeah, it is the Hulk.
Nico. And so, you know, don't get me wrong. He is the last running car to get a point. But I'm still going to give it a good performance because he did show some good stuff throughout the race weekend. And we've said it enough times today, stepping into that car. I mean, it's like picking you or I up and saying, go and run a Formula One car next weekend. Yeah, okay, we might not have the experience Nico does, but we haven't driven these cars. We don't know what they're like.
No, exactly. That's it.
Fair play to him.
Yeah, fair play to him. He's done that. I think he's done well. Just based on everything through practice and qualifying alone would have been more than enough for me to go, this guy should be in the race seat rather than Lance.
Oh, God, yeah. Or Latifi, for that matter.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a few options there where he should go. But, one day, in an ideal world. Are we into retirements now, aren't we?
We are indeed.
So, Checo Perez, I'm imagining, is the first one on the list.
He is indeed last runner, or last official runner, because he was only a lap down by that respect. I'm going to give Checo a good. Yeah. I actually thought it was a really solid performance leading up until that. He was doing very Checo Perez things. He was fast when he needed to be. He was holding steady when he needed to be. He was looking after his tyres well. You know, it was very much what I expect from a Checo performance. It
It's what
was
he
pretty good.
does. It's what he does. You know,
Yeah,
he looks after tyres. He gets the car where it needs to be, and just plods on, gets on with it. Doesn't complain, doesn't grumble, just gets on with it.
agreed.
Yeah, no, that's good. The next one's obviously Max. Is it Max?
It is, yeah, Max P19. So I'm going to give Max a very good.
Mm.
I actually think Max had a decent race. I think he had some titanic battles with Charles Leclerc, swapping positions. He was doing a really good job. Obviously, you can't fault him for the mechanical failure which stopped the car. What hurt me a little bit from Max's performance was one, the needless radio messages and losing his cool. He was clearly a bit rattled, and also a couple of lockups and a couple of odd decisions on track. But otherwise, a pretty strong race.
Yeah, pretty strong overall. And then obviously we've got the unfortunate Pierre Gasly, whose car decided to become a barbecue.
I'm still going to say Gasly had a good weekend.
He did.
You know, but apart from not getting points, he did well.
Yeah, I mean, he was quite happily plodding around in 8th place. You know, he was on for some good points. Just that powertrain, you know, that's just let him down.
Yeah, it is a worry.
Yeah, it's
a worry.
It's a big worry, actually, to be fair. Well, I think that's our rankings then. So
I think so. I'm closing the laptop.
Yeah, that is our rankings, and I don't disagree with any of those, to be honest. I think they're all pretty spot on, par for the course. Obviously, I hope we see something different from a few teams in Jeddah, but I'm not a fan of the Jeddah track for a start, and we've only got 1 week, so there's not really much here. As a team on flyaways like this, you can't really do too much.
No, but the Jeddah track is very predicated on long, fast sweeping corners, which in theory better play towards the strength of the ground effect cars.
Yeah.
Maybe that will go some way to making up the deficit of some of the other cars that weren't as good this week.
And it's a freshly laid, smooth surface as well.
So, it wants to be the way we're seeing these cars running.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to see is I want to see how the ground effect cars are through the banked corners. You know, like Zandvoort, that banked last corner. I want to see how ground effect works through there. You know, is that going to make a massive difference where it then suddenly levels out? Do you get a bit of transition in the ground? Because they haven't got the side skirts, have they? They haven't got the skirting that the old ones used to have. So...
No, they don't. Yeah, it'd be interesting actually, because the banking creates additional aero grip for you.
Yeah.
And additional mechanical grip because it's pushing the weight around in the car into the tyres in a little way. So that is likely to make up in some way for the deficit of anything lost from ground effect in the banking. We'll see. Be interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Like I say, I'm not a fan of it, and I'm sure the guys on here will recall our thoughts on the Jeddah track from last time out, because it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And it is just a meh track. I don't have a positive thing to say about it, but
I don't think either of us are big fans of unnecessary street tracks. I mean, let's face it, if it wasn't for the fact that Monaco was such an iconic circuit, I don't think either of us would suggest we race there at all, because it's not a modern racetrack, and I don't like modern street tracks. Keep that to Formula E, where they were originally designed for, and give us proper race circuits. There's some amazing world circuits out there that we don't go to anymore. You know, what about Kyalami? When are we going to go to South Africa and go to Kyalami?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you know, let's not forget we've got like other tracks that like MotoGP goes to, and we don't go to them. You know, and they're more than
Mugello. Mugello was a great track that we used during the pandemic.
That was great. Yeah, I'm all for that. You know, and you know, we keep on talking about it, but you know, Istanbul and places like that. I know they've sort of come back to more to the forefront. But you know, a purpose-built racing venue with some interesting corners and elevation changes and all that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe leave Korea where it is.
Wasn't
the best of tracks.
What about India? Shall we go back to India?
I can't remember. Which was the Indian track?
Oh, come on. No?
No.
Oh, God, that was like 2013, you know.
Oh, I don't remember that. I'll have to go. I'll have to go googling. I'll have to go
Yeah.
googling. But Istanbul's definitely on my list. I'd say go back to Istanbul. That was a
Yeah,
good circuit.
Istanbul. I mean, they're always on standby, aren't they? Filling in for one of the venues that's cancelled again. I'm sure they're
Oh, they might
for
be.
Russia. For
Well, with the
Russia,
Russian one.
the Russian one. Yeah, I'm sure they're filling in for that. So, yeah, plenty of racetracks out there. We just need to branch out. Just
Yeah,
need to
we do. I mean, there's plenty of
broaden our
great
horizon.
circuits in America. Although we are
Yeah,
going to
there
end
are.
up with 2 American races as it is. But
Yeah, but I would prefer to be at a proper racetrack, not the Miami drive around a football stadium, Mickey
I
Mouse,
agree.
fucking another needless street track.
Yeah, go to Laguna Seca.
Yeah, Laguna Seca, you've got Road Atlanta, you've got Road
Road
America.
Atlanta might be a real pain in the arse for a
Yeah,
Formula One
well,
car.
it probably would be, but be fun. Yeah, Road America though, that's a big venue that can cope with F1. It has IndyCar around there enough, so it has world endurance races and IMSA races and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's plenty of tracks out there. What are you
Yeah,
looking at? You're looking at
I
Indy,
am
aren't you?
looking at. I'm looking up the Indian track. Was it only raced once in F1?
Was it once or twice?
So I'm showing Sebastian Vettel winning it in
Yeah.
2011.
Yes, he did win it in 2011. Yeah,
Why do I not remember this track?
because it was a largely forgetful track.
Well, maybe that's what it is. And do you know what? I'll tell you some good tracks we don't go to anymore that we really should. Pacific Raceway was a good track,
Mm.
and the Fuji Speedway. There's some really good
Yes.
tracks in
Yeah.
Japan that we
Yeah.
don't go to.
Yeah. They actually they had originally built a purpose-built venue to take over from, actually of all places, Suzuka.
Okay.
Oh God, what's the name of it? The Super Formula race there, the old the former Formula Nippon cars. They
Oh,
go there. Oh God, what's the name of it?
Super GT was what I was thinking of, but that's not Formula Nippon.
No, 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 no. Hang on. Let me do this. Right, Super.
I mean, Fiji used to have some interesting races, mostly because of the weather.
Yeah. Oh
You
God.
know, there was some torrential weather. In fact, that goes back
To
to
be honest,
the Hunt and Lauda days. It was Fuji Speedway that Lauda retired from that gave Hunt the
the
championship.
championship. Yes, it did. Correct. Um, the one that I always remember though is that downpour race, and then Mark Webber threw up in his helmet.
Yeah,
You just hear him.
yeah, that was unpleasant. I don't wish to relive that.
I was like, no, no, no. Why have you done that? Why have you done that? Autopolis. That was a purpose-built venue that was meant to have gone on to Formula One. Um, and interestingly, in 1990 to 1991, in the campaign phase when it was meant to be securing the contract, it was emblazoned across the Benetton Formula One cars.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it didn't come to fruition in the end because it got criticised for being too remote, and they hadn't finished constructing any hotels or anything near the actual track. So it lost out in the end, and Suzuka got the contract back.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Suzuka is iconic in its own way,
Yeah,
but it's still a good circuit. It's not just iconic for the sake
it's
of
just
it.
a good driver's track.
Yeah,
I thoroughly
agreed.
enjoy driving Suzuka on sims and stuff.
Yeah, it's a
But
good
anyway,
challenging track.
we've kind of yeah darted off in a random obscure direction as we always do. Um, but the final thing I wanted to ask was your prediction then for the Drivers' World Title and the
Oh,
Constructors.
oh,
And we'll come back to this at the end of the season.
Jesus.
I mean, I know where I am. I'm with Charles being drivers' champion and Ferrari winning the constructors because Sainz is consistent.
I mean, I would have to agree because I can't look past Ferrari. Their current pace, they look dominant. Charles is showing he's always shown he's a great driver. You know, he's won multiple Grand Prix already.
Yeah.
And that was, he showed his mettle up against Sebastian Vettel when Vettel was still a Ferrari driver. He was outperforming him.
Yeah, made the team his own. Really did.
Absolutely. So, fair play to him. No disrespect to Charles Leclerc. It's not just that he's been handed an amazing car and now he can do something with it. He's there on merit to begin with. So I think you're right. I think if performance metrics continue on the way that they are, I think we'll see Leclerc as champion.
Yeah.
And I would also agree, I think Ferrari would get the constructors based on that, because I think Carlos is a more consistent, I don't want to say number 2 driver because that sounds so belittling to him, but I think he's a more consistent teammate.
He is a consistent driver. I mean, last year he was the driver with the longest streak of points finishes in a row, and that just shows that he will plug a result out of that car. If you let him get on with it, he will pull a result out.
But I'm going to want to revisit this. So here we go. I think we should revisit this prediction in Austria.
Ooh.
So for our podcast following Austria, which is roughly the mid-season, and the reason I say that is I am expecting B cars or massive leaps and bounds in development for some of these cars. I don't know what that will do. Red Bull are there or thereabouts as it is. Yeah. If they have another big development, that puts them well above Ferrari. Mercedes could unpick whatever's wrong with their car and get themselves right up there. I think the surprise could be Alfa or Haas being in the top 4 at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Austria. We should revisit it at Austria. That's the plan.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, well, we're both Ferrari then at the moment. So anyway. I think
there's no controversy there, is there? No. In which case, no. I've got to change my bet. It's Nicholas Latifi for world champion, and the constructors is going to go to McLaren. There you go. Hey, twice we've been speechless in this podcast. Once I've been speechless. Now he's speechless.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just feels weird ending the podcast like this now.
Oh, we can't be completely in agreement, can we? I mean, let's face it, we are completely in agreement that it's going to be Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. But that's boring. We need some controversy.
Yeah, it is, and I'm sure everyone's going to be like, "Oh, you're just saying that because he's come out for the first race and won it." But no, I generally believe that he's looking fiery enough to rival Verstappen. I think he can handle Verstappen's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. But notice we are saying Charles, not Carlos.
Yes, yeah.
And we both highly rate Carlos as a driver.
Oh yeah. I mean, God, if I was team manager, I'd have Carlos any day. If they said to me,
100%.
Carlos is available, yeah, get him in the car. Yeah. But yeah,
absolutely.
So, guys, this is it. And the end of the first podcast, a return to F1. If you obviously have liked the content, hit the like and the subscribe button. If you want to know when the videos go up, hit the little bell notification. And leave comments with your predictions and thoughts and stuff as well, about what you feel is going to happen this season. We're always intrigued to see other perspectives. So yeah, let us know. But I mean, from me, it's going to be thank you very much, and we'll see you next time out. And that's me, John.
Oh, you put that on me like I'm going to have some poignant closing words. I don't. I think you said everything we need to say. It was a great race weekend. Long may they continue, and let's hope for a cracking 2022-23 season.
Yeah, wow, really looking forward to it. So, au revoir. See you later. Goodbye.